Henen bought a virtual reality capsule for one reason: sleep. Nearly 10,000 logged hours later, that sleep had become training. His secret Descendant of Thanoos class converted rest into permanent stats. Outside the game, Henen endured humiliation to fund Rowena's treatment. His paralyzed sister depended on money he could barely keep earning. Inside the capsule, 1 hour of sleep restored 5 hours worth. Then Hien checked his status and found beginner-breaking attributes. That proof convinced him to quit work and chase the rankings. 6 years earlier, a truck crash killed Henen and Rowena's parents and left 14-year-old Rowena unable to walk. Rowena blamed herself because she had asked the family to stop at a store before the accident. Henen buried his grief under work, paying for treatment while trying to keep his sister hopeful. Doctors saw progress, and Rowena slowly regained enough confidence to joke with him. A physician suggested virtual reality therapy, so Henen bought Rowena a capsule and eventually bought one for himself. Rowena used the game to feel free. Again, Henen mainly used his capsule as the only place he could sleep. When he finally checked his status, the accumulated sleep had pushed his attributes far beyond normal starting values. An ordinary beginner began around 5 points per attribute, while his Descendant of Thanoos stats were already massive. Henen understood those numbers could become income, and 2 months of savings gave him enough time to take the risk. He cooked breakfast, looked after Rowena, and noticed she was secretly practicing movements inspired by what she could do in-game. Then he walked into the office and handed Parker, his supervisor, a resignation letter. Parker tried using Rowena's illness to pressure him into staying, and Henen finally stopped swallowing years of humiliation. One slammed fist and a few cold words ended the relationship. Henen left the office without asking permission. He rented an elite immersion capsule for 9 hours and logged back into the game as a full-time player. His divine class carried a severe cost. Every level required 5 times the normal experience. In exchange, its base power scaled just as brutally, giving him strength ordinary beginners could not approach. The class belonged to Thanoos, a prank-loving skeletal deity whose ridiculous appearance hid a completely broken skill set. Narcolepsy of Thanoos converted sleep into attributes, turning rest into the most efficient training Henen could perform. The Divine Item Shop offered permanent skills and equipment that would never drop on death. Nightmares of Thanoos removed weapon restrictions, letting Henen fight with almost anything he could pick up. Then the Narcolepsy skill activated on its own, knocking his avatar unconscious barely minutes after he paid for the expensive capsule. Instead of grinding, he had rented premium hardware to watch his own character snore for hours. On the way home, Henen learned Rowena had been hiding a secret of her own. Her physical therapy was working, and she could already stand without telling him. In-game, Rowena played under the name Queen and earned enough money to cover her hospital bills herself. She had tried telling Henen before, but his work obsession made him dismiss every explanation as a joke. When he announced that he had quit to become a professional player, Rowena reacted with excitement instead of panic. Her success proved gaming could support them, but Henen still wanted to carry his share. The siblings made a bet. With his secret divine class, Henen would reach the top 100 within 3 months. Queen laughed at the deadline and predicted he would ask for her help within a month. Henen kept his class secret, accepted the challenge, and returned to the game determined to prove her wrong. His next login revealed another absurd result. 58 hours of accumulated sleep had raised his attributes again. The tutorial dummy shattered under one blow, immediately exposing how far his stats had exceeded beginner balance. The game awarded Monster Rookie, a title whose experience bonus offset the heavy leveling penalty of his divine class. Henen could now gain experience at a normal pace, while keeping the raw strength that made his class unfair. Instead of choosing the safest beginner zone, he entered a village notorious for acid slimes and dangerous red orcs. 2 guards assumed the newcomer would die quickly and tried warning him away from the forest. An acid slime fired first. Henen dodged cleanly and destroyed its core with a single counterattack. He returned only to ask where the orcs lived, convincing the guards that he was either suicidal or completely insane. Feeling sorry for him, they pooled money for a teleportation scroll, so he could escape when the monsters overwhelmed him. Accepting their charity triggered the ridiculous King of Beggars title, which granted bonuses if Henen ever committed to begging. Then he found the red orcs, whose speed looked almost slow against his inflated attributes. Nightmares of Thanoos spread terror through the pack, and Henen cleared the area while barely being pressured. He hauled 50 orc hides back to the merchant and converted a short hunt into more money than his old job could produce. That profit erased the last doubt about quitting, so Henen sprinted back into the forest before the guards could ask for their coins. After 10 hours of hunting, experience gains slowed enough for him to reorganize his build. With strength already excessive, he pushed 140 remaining points into intellect to expand his mana pool. Next came the Divine Shop, where every purchase was a random draw instead of a direct choice. A normal pull gave him a plain steel knife, which was unimpressive but confirmed how the shop worked. The higher-tier pulls became stranger: a bloodstone ring, a useless-looking twig staff, and the failed item of Iris. The Iris item opened the first step of a legendary quest, giving the apparently worthless drop future value. His legendary pull was even more confusing, producing an unidentified purple egg instead of an obvious weapon. Henen switched to skill draws and finally hit better luck with Dash, Magic Shot, Berserker Song, and Siphon Seduction. The jackpot was Chain of the Death God, a legendary area attack capable of deleting groups instead of single targets. At the game's monitoring center, Manager Cho watched Henen's data and realized the class alone did not explain his performance. Henen's reaction and control were exceptional, giving him the mechanical skill to exploit powers that would already be dangerous in average hands. Cho hoped the random shop would slow him down, but the skill combination instead made the beginner even harder to contain. Henen targeted the Red Orc boss next, both for experience and to push closer to his 3-month ranking promise. The boss's tricks forced him to stop playing around, so he unleashed Chain of the Death God and ended the fight. Victory exposed the entrance to the hidden orc tomb, and being its first discoverer, granted a double experience bonus. Inside, Henen learned Magic Shot could critically damage spirits, adding another useful answer to his growing arsenal. Far outside the dungeon, Rowena continued rehabilitation, while still believing her brother was nowhere near the level he claimed. Right at that moment, Ren, the leader of an elite guild who was using her alt account named Rena to power level, happened to be passing by. Based on his high movement speed, she assumed Henen was a player around level 70 or 80. Although the appearance of the weapon did not change due to the failed item from Iris that he had equipped, his damage doubled. When they finally finalized the group, the system sent out a notification that Henen, a level 35 player, had joined the team. Rena started to wonder how someone at that level could run at the speed of a level 80 player, quickly realizing that Henen must possess a legendary class. Still, Rena became curious about his absurd attributes for such a low level, and chose to test his skills in practice. As soon as they arrived at the Lighten Cave, Aeon warned Henen to be careful and promised that they would help him if he fell into danger. Aeon commented on this danger, but Henen calmly replied that it was only fair for him to show what he was capable of since his level was so low. After, they entered the Lighten Cave, which was accumulated, meaning that no one had been there for a long time. He activated the recording for his video channel and put on a magic mask, which he personally considered to be his charm. Finally, he finished the fight with the Song of Thanoos skill, exploding the monster with dark energy. The young faced 3 werewolves at the same time and delivered such precise cuts that one of the monsters turned green with pain and hallucinated due to the passive effect of the then weapon. When they finally caught up to him, Henen just turned around and asked if they could start the real hunt now. Henen was so intimidating under his mask that the game code itself made the monster tremble in fear. Elsewhere, at the castle of the Hero Guild, the elite group of the game, which consisted of only 7 members, Suni was feeling bored. The 2 girls began talking about Henen, and Rowena mentioned that her brother had quit his job because he secured an incredibly powerful class at level 1. Hearing this, Suni nearly choked on her food, since reaching level 30 in one day, without any help, was something even the top players in their elite guild could not achieve. He encountered a group of 11 werewolves, and instead of calling for backup, he smiled behind his mask, thrilled at the idea of taking them all down at once. First, he used his magic shot to pierce the monster's flesh as he ran, and then he dashed straight through the pack, dodging every single attack. Bursting with energy, Henen apologized for getting carried away and going too far ahead, asking them if they had to rest. Rina started to think it was humiliating to be the leader of one of the biggest guilds in the world, while being carried by a level 40 player. The game warned that if he pushed his body too hard with mechanical movements, he would suffer stress damage just like in real life. Wanting to be a good partner, He told the girls he would handle the big boss, while they had fun with the smaller ones, Seisk sighed. He defeated the elite monster with absolute ease, using throwing knives, sword strikes, and finishing it off with the dark energy of Thanoos, leaving the beast with no chance to react. Henen then woke up in his capsule back in the real world, feeling terrible, worried that the girls would hate him for falling asleep in the middle of a mission. It was not him, but rather his artificial intelligence operating in full battle mode. The character killed elite and common monsters without even stopping to collect the loot. Rena and Aeon finally caught up to him at the entrance of the final boss room, where they found the Soul Wolf named Service. The problem was that it had been so long since anyone had entered that dungeon that the boss had accumulated bonuses, gaining a giant boost in strength. The editor had not slept for 2 days because he was so excited about the videos, and he pointed out how Henen's fighting style changed sometimes. The editor even asked if Henen had bipolar disorder or psychopathy, which prompted Henen to explain that he used a skill where the artificial intelligence played for him while he slept. Back in the game, the artificial intelligence of Henen was putting on a show against the boss Service. He fired magic bullets and used the monster's own shoulder as a platform to jump and change his trajectory in midair. Elsewhere, the sisters watched the whole thing, unable to believe the sheer precision of Henen's movements. Still, Henen, controlled by the artificial intelligence, began playing mental chess with the boss. Whenever the boss thought he saw an opening, Henen would snap his fingers and deliver a critical hit that left the beast stunned for 10 seconds. Ren quickly figured out the strategy, realizing that Henen was using the black bullet solely to destabilize the boss emotionally. The boss fell into a trance, plunged into an illusion of death, and was ultimately wrapped in the chains of the god of death. Henen had not only soloed a boss that no one had been able to defeat for ages, but he also walked out of the battle jumping from level 50 to level 53. Ren felt a bit frustrated, considering that Henen had cleared the entire dungeon all by himself, while they had only tried their best not to lag behind. He reported that the player had already reached level 53, which left his boss shocked, especially since the development team had not even finished preparing the updates for the Empire yet. The game was basically trying its best to adapt to Henen's impressive speed, but it seemed like the system would not be able to hold up for much longer. The main issue was that as soon as the quest was unlocked, a mysterious level 100 castle suddenly appeared out of nowhere near Venice, catching the attention of the game's emperor. The emperor, famously known as the Iron Monarch, was an unpredictable tyrant who had already sent thousands of players to the game's 100-year prison, making him the absolute terror of the customer support team. To top it all off, that castle hid a very dangerous secret, which was a demonic creature called the Wyvern. Aside from Henen, another legendary level player had also gained a quest linked to this mysterious castle. His vassals lived in constant fear of him, and all the emperor really wanted was someone interesting to talk to or fight. Karen was desperately searching for someone who could keep him entertained, as he found the Korean server to be far too quiet and boring. On the other side of things, after analyzing his recent battle against the boss Karaka, Henen understood that his combat style had to evolve. When he arrived, the master asked him who he was, and Henen confidently replied that he was there to fight. Henen chose a sword similar to the one he used in the virtual game, and mentioned that he had practiced kendo during his childhood. Master was highly impressed by this display, noting that Henen's technique was absolutely flawless, though he still lacked the physical endurance needed for a prolonged fight. This way, Henen could use the sword for his main attacks, while utilizing the dagger to protect his blind spots, or even throw it at enemies. Rena and her sister remained seated on the dungeon floor, watching over Henen's avatar, which was still knocked out. Her sister asked her how long he would stay in that state, and Rena admitted she did not know. Henen vanished right in front of her eyes, but Rena refused to give up and chose to search for videos of his fight on the internet to track down his whereabouts. Seeing an opportunity to do business, he decided not to sell his spare items to the standard game shop, choosing instead to sell everything to a player merchant. The penalty for failing this quest was shocking, as Henen would be reset all the way back to level 1 if the Empire reconnaissance squad reached the castle before he did. After seeing some players wearing incredible armor, he understood he needed better protection to fight against other humans. This meant he had to travel on foot by running the entire way, but he trusted his divine speed to overtake the reconnaissance squad, which was large and naturally slow. The two officials pretended to be close friends, but they were secretly planning to betray each other while preparing to invade the castle, unaware that Henen was already racing to get there first. Rear, who held deep grudges, planned to use this newfound power to get revenge on everyone who had ever looked down on him in the game. The group planned to reach the castle in 10 days, and Reiner hoped that if everything went well, he would become the new mayor or earn a title of nobility. Even though both he and Soa possess classes tied to Thanoos, the god of death, they do not notice each other. Back in the control center, Manager Cho gets incredibly tense when he notices that two players with the exact same class are in the same location, but fate is not working to bring them together. Henen realizes that the guild is scheming, believing Henen is just a low-level beginner. The recruiter decides this is the perfect time to sneakily eliminate him in the middle of the forest. The recruiter, whose name is Ida, tried to ambush Henen in the forest, but ended up in a terrible situation. Furious about his death, Edel sends a message in the Superhumans Guild chat claiming that a masked man killed him with the help of an accomplice. This prompts the guild leader, Henen, to personally log into the game to hunt Henen down. Realizing that Henen became a target of the guild because she was the one who killed Adele, she decides she needs to protect him. Thinking their opponent will easily surrender, the players begin to mock Henen and demand to know the identity of his accomplice. During the battle, he found that eliminating other players grants him permanent health points due spot to the passive ability of Thanoos. So, feeling proud of himself for cutting an arrow in half. To avoid causing trouble when returning to the camp, he removed the mask of Thanoos. Henen abandoned the official quest and vanished into the fog, leaving Sora confused about how he could fight so well and disappear so quickly. At the Superhumans Guild, the leader Henen was furious when he found that his men had been eliminated and that the map was stolen. Knowing that the map did not guarantee Henen would arrive first, Henen chose to log out for 2 hours rest. He planned an elite squad of 5 players between level 150 and he had karma points accumulated from the quests, which allowed him to fight without fear of penalties. Soon, Henen found the camp of Henen's elite group. Without warning, Henen stepped out of the shadows and activated his provocation skill. Using his skills of Thanoos, he immobilized his opponents, who were left drooling and trembling as they turned to dust. When Henen finally chose to end the game, he eliminated Henen with such efficiency that the leader gained a 5-day ban from entering the game. She was exhausted because her guild leader, Ren, had started hunting at an insane speed, likely trying to catch up to Hen without realizing it. Later, while Henen was training at the gym, he heard gossip in the locker room about the downfall of the Superhumans Guild. Elsewhere, Henen's editor, Jaiwan, released the new video of the player cutting an arrow in half. The master even thought that, putting aside the legends of the game, Henen was a monster in real life as well. The trainer started to attack for real, but Henen blocked every single strike. Worried about Henen's obsession, the trainer ordered him to stop. The editor Jaiwan had asked for an impactful nickname that would combine Henen's 2 fighting styles, which together resembled the concept of Jackal and Hyde. The nurse suggested the name Asura, explaining that it came from an old cartoon character who was split down the middle, and also referred to the god with 3 faces and multiple arms. She had witnessed Henen wipe out the Superhuman Guild and had chose to wait for him to return from his logout period. She spent 10, 20, and then 40 in-game hours, which was nearly 2 full days sitting on a tree branch waiting for his return. The tension in the air was palpable with an elite player who had waited 2 days to talk on one side, and a sleepwalker who just aimed to reach the castle on the other. She claimed her mission was to keep anyone from entering the castle, but Henen could tell the sorceress was hiding her true goals to break the ice. This left the sorceress in complete shock, since only one person could possess a legendary class skill, leaving her highly confused as to how Henen had the exact same ability as her. And since the god of death was the supreme leader, it was highly possible that he had more than one legendary follower under his command. On top of that, the worst part was that Thanoos, being the god of sleep, made players pass out at the worst possible moments instead of granting them useful powers. According to the hierarchy, he was the direct descendant of Thanoos, which technically made him her superior. Soe was instantly mesmerized by his appearance, thinking he was incredibly handsome and that with his looks and skill, he would not even have to try hard to become successful. Upon arriving at the castle, they came face-to-face with an emerald magic barrier, and a systems message popped up to warn them that only the Descendant of Thanoos could enter. She used a territory skill, summoned an army of shadows, and stood guard with her scythe, ready for anyone who got close. Elsewhere inside, Henen ran into Wyverner, a 100-meter-tall creature. The first challenge, though, wasn't a fight. Henen figured it would be better to skip the test and just fight already. But the system didn't cut him any slack. The fight kicked off with insane tension, and the Wyvern's spinning attack made Henen's whole body shake as the monster tore the arena apart. The Wyvern tried to launch a fireball, but Henen used Siren's Call to distract it and barely got away. Cho was panicking because if Henen won on max difficulty, he'd get items and skill that weren't supposed to exist at this point in the game. Elsewhere, Henen noticed the Wyvern was clumsy in close combat, so he activated Thanoos' knock and started tearing into the monster with his sword and dagger combo. Then it tried to charge up a massive fire breath, but Henen canceled it with another Siren's Call. In a wild genius move, he flew straight into the Wyvern's mouth and finished it off from the inside, triggering a flood of level-up notifications as he walked out of the smoke, grinning under. After that, Henen got taken to the reward room and found Thanoos' apostle in hologram form. Henen had chosen Thanoos' lucid dream skill, which came with the heavy penalty of reducing his earned experience by 50%, meaning it would take him much longer to level up. Cho felt a brief moment of relief, thinking the player would take a long time to progress. Back in the game, the castle started to crumble after the dungeon was cleared, forcing Henen to run for his life. He found Sosoe waiting outside, who initially thought he had failed the quest because the castle had vanished. Second, he gained the Desert Mirage shoes, which allowed him to create a clone of himself to escape danger or trick his enemies. Henen swallowed the item and instantly gained 500 points of intelligence and magic power. On top of that, he learned the Dragon Tongue skill. They decided that the official name of the channel would be Ashura, a short and memorable name, referencing deities that fit perfectly with his character class. He offered some professional advice, noting that while Henen's manual plays were fantastic, the game's artificial intelligence operated on an entirely different level, so the best strategy would be to focus only on the most. Henen then revealed that he had already reached level 74 and had arrived in Vienna, a region typically recommended for players of level 100 and above. Unable to even use his own name, consumed by resentment, Reiner chose to sell everything he had saved, created a brand new account, and acquire a unique class. And at the quest location, he crossed paths with Amir, the merchant to whom he had previously sold low-value items for an excellent price. He lied and said his class was only rare, and Amir pretended to believe the story before introducing him to the rest of the group. When it came time to fight an orc and a giant turtle, Henen showed his true strength. Surprised by the absurd speed and control Henen displayed, they decided they had to proceed with their plan very carefully. Soon it was time to choose which path to take in the cavern, and Amir presented the options to the group. After they defeated a giant shark, Henen started to notice that the group was constantly asking for breaks to rest. Soon, the archer Kuma used a taunt skill with a magic coin to attract monsters, and Henen pretended to be hit by an attack just to see how the healer of the group would react. Kuma, using his archer vision, ordered everyone to stop and pretended to find a secret wall by pure instinct, claiming he saw something strange up ahead. They aimed to let Henen fight on the front line against the area boss, wait for him to get exhausted, and then finish him off with friendly fire to take all the rewards. The merchant Amir stayed far back, using a gold multiplication skill to throw coins, while the girls in Kumasen started to act. While the cheaters tried to hit Henen on purpose under the pretext of an accident, he dodged with ease, causing their blows to hit the boss instead. The boss was defeated, the dungeon was cleared, and everyone was teleported to the entrance of Venice. Still, since Henen possessed the Dragon Tongue passive skill, he could ignore this cooldown time and fire magic sharks continuously. With this, Henen now had 3 people on his friends list, which was a bit ironic since he had not even added his own sister yet. Elsewhere, Kuma and Fawn hid nearby and started planning an attack against Air, taking advantage of the fact that Henen had left. This action earned him 150 points of negative karma, which made him a villain in the eyes of the game. Unable to accept that they were defeated by a lower-level player, they started to theorize that Henen had an ally of level 100 or higher hiding in the shadows, as they did not. Outside the game in real life, the video that Jawan edited became a massive success, reaching 30 million views and 1 million subscribers in record time, even being featured on the main page of the... Without knowing that the player, Ashura, was her own brother sitting right next to her, she asked if he knew the editor of the video, and if he could invite Ashura to join her guild. Determined to recruit Ashura, she asked Rowena to send him a message saying she aimed to return the items secured from the cave dungeon and would like to be his friend. If Henen accepted the meeting, Ren would discover that he and Ashura were the exact same person in the blink of an eye. Out in the forest, a horde of monsters gained the order to hunt and kill the Descendant of Thanoos, indicating that Henen would not have any peace even to complete his class advancement quests. Henen finally obtained 100 reputation points and went to visit the Pantheon to research the god Thanoos. He was gained by the bishop, who showed extreme nervousness while sitting in front of him. But the one who really drew attention was Libby, the elite follower of Thanoos. After that, Libius led Henen to a secret area of the temple, a gigantic and empty place, since nobody aimed to be anywhere near the god of death. With all the seriousness in the world, Libby replied only that Lord Thanoos was the strongest among the gods. Even though Libby could not attack directly because of the level difference, he could still provide buffs and heals. She was shocked because the player was only level 85 and was leveling up way too fast. In addition, the Descendant of Thanoos would receive 2 skills at once upon reaching level 100, consisting of 1 passive skill and 1 absolute skill. These creatures sensed Henen's energy as the Descendant of Thanoos and charged in his direction like homing missiles. To avoid being surrounded by 1,000 monsters at once, Henen had the idea of asking Libius to divide and spread the energy of Thanoos throughout the forest. With the energy of Thanoos scattered all over the forest, the beast score and the other monsters became confused, as they felt Henen's presence coming from all directions at the same time. With the help of Libius, the level 560 priest, after defeating the creature, Henen used a new skill called Thanoos Soul Summoning, absorbing the wolf's soul to bring it back into the fight. With his new ally ready, Henen celebrated the fact that he now had a giant hunting hound that attacked even harder than when it was alive. Upon spotting the champion, ogre, and the orc leader, Henen decided he would not need to use the artificial intelligence of his sleepwalking mode, since Libby's buffs were more than enough for the battle. When the ogre tried to strike the ground with his weapon and missed, Henen seized the opportunity to jump onto the monster's back, delivering precise cuts and accumulating heavy damage. Soon, Henen used magic to summon a shark tsunami against the ogre, but Henen was saved by his special belt, which activated instantly and negated the impact damage. This ability allowed him to ignore the cooldown of all his powers for 1 minute, while also reducing his enemy's defense to 0 for 10 days in game time. To complete the ultimate combo, Henen activated the Berserker's Song, making himself invulnerable for 10 seconds, and gaining 50% more speed and attack power. Furious at seeing his partner humiliated, Ferric cast a technique called Spirit Shackles, which pinned Henen to the ground. To make matters worse, the system warned that not even the Belt of Dreams could cancel this effect. Rhea confessed that she recognized Henen from videos on the famous Asura channel on YouTube and had tracked him all the way to Venice. With the assistant song gone, Henen and Reyna headed to a cafe in Venice to talk in private. On top of that, he gained a movement skill book containing a level 1 random teleport that consumed no mana and had a short cooldown. He was particularly worried about the members of her guild, especially his own sister Rowena. Rhea agreed to the request, though she remained curious about. Right after that, Henen accepted Reyna's friend request, realizing that having a direct line of contact with someone from an elite guild would be incredibly useful for gathering information. In addition to activating the combat artificial intelligence, the Asura Knight, this skill would now restore his health while he slept and fought. With this, Henen could fight using the master mode of the artificial intelligence and heal himself at the same time, meaning he would not need the Belt of Dreams as much anymore. The success of the Asura channel had attracted 34 major companies wanting to sign contracts and sponsorships, reaching the level of an elite professional streamer. Next, he hired trusted friends to help edit the videos, since he insisted on personally handling Henen's content, which was the main highlight of the company. Soon, Jaiwan gained a call from a famous streamer named Umi, who was highly interested in meeting Henen and recording a collaboration. He explained that the Imperial Warriors tournament was coming up, and that the rules would be balanced by the game system itself, scaling levels and skills so that no one would have an unfair advantage. Next, Jaiwan asked what level Henen was currently at, and gasped in shock when he heard that he had already reached level 94. In light of this, Jaiwan offered an important piece of advice, suggesting that he stop leveling up for now. Jaiwan was confused and asked if Henen was the one responsible for stopping the attack in Venice. Putting the game aside, Hiten took his sister Rowena to the movie theater. Suddenly, Rowena surprised Henen by getting up from her seat and standing on her own. Feeling deeply moved, Henen acted like a protective older brother and urged her to start preparing for university. Henen wanted his sister to make up for the time she had lost. Rowena accepted his proposal to go to university. On screen, game experts estimated that the mysterious player must be above level 300, as they could not comprehend how he defeated the bosses so quickly and vanished, unaware that the person responsible was sitting. Without the bosses to control them, the common creatures became enraged and started to attack Venice with even more ferocity. The situation was critical, and the news reports indicated that the fall of the city was only a matter of time until an in-game announcement revealed that Asura had appeared on the eastern wall. As Henen had finally tested the skill he bought earlier, he activated the Sweet Sleep skill, which put his character into a deep slumber to recover health. His speed increased drastically, and the chains of Thanoos started to fly in every direction, binding the monsters as he charged through the battlefield. Not satisfied with just that, he used his skill to resurrect the soul of a giant orc, summoning Boggs to fight alongside him. If he leveled up too much, he would be placed in the elite player category for the tournament, and would not be able to compete against the slightly lower-level professionals as he had planned. As soon as the effects of the sleep skill ended, Hehen decided he had to log out of the game. He thanked his master for the opportunity to see the face of the god Thanoos with his own eyes, bowing so low that he hit his head on the ground in pure joy. Even though Rowena made a joke about already being able to stand on the television in the lobby, a video of Asura was playing, and Rowena commented that his fighting style seemed to be changing. Henen just gave a subtle smirk, thinking to himself that she had no idea that Asura was the very persons pushing her wheelchair at that moment. The doctor detailed how many families suffocate patients with guilt or anxiety, but Henen did the exact opposite, which motivated Rowena to push herself to the limit to make him proud. Elsewhere, over at the Hero Guild where Ren and Rowena are located, an emergency meeting was taking place regarding the Asura phenomenon. The members debated his abilities, with some praising him as a combat genius. Ren then revealed to the group that she had already hunted with him, which shocked the entire guild. The guild leader, Eden, arrived soon and took control of the situation. Since the strongest guild members are above level 400, they cannot enter the mission directly without unbalancing the game. The guild also discussed the entry of Henen, but Ren defended Henen with everything she had, mostly because she knows he has direct contact with Asura. He plans to use the Pantheon Temple so that the powerful non-playable characters can bypass the level barriers and help in the battle. At the same time, the Dark Guild, which is the second largest guild on the Korean server, also has its eyes on Asura. Eden admits that not even their own guild would have the strength to hold back this rival group if a real fight breaks out. Henen is currently at level 99, which puts him in the same category as professional players for the upcoming tournament. After waking, he gains the notification that the Venice defense mission has been successfully completed, and the reward item has already dropped directly into his inventory. With only 6 days left until the Grand Imperial tournament, the guilds are in a frenzy trying to figure out if Asura will participate, but no official information has been released. Planning to use the tournament to gain fame and ultimately destroy the Shinwa Guild, which belongs to Henen's sister and is widely known as the Hero Guild. The leaders of this dark guild plan to hire the best professionals to dominate the scene, believing that once they win the competition, Asura will have no choice but to join them. Since the required level for the competition is between 100 and 200, the other guilds are sending only their elite members. Upon arriving in the capital, Henen encounters a massive registration line for players under level 100. Deciding to stop saving his points, he invests in new skills, planning to combine rare, unique, and heroic techniques to create an unpredictable fighting style. Henson puts on his mask, starts recording a video for his channel, and charges into battle without using any magic, relying solely on his physical technique, movement control, and blade work. When the system asks if he wants to register his achievement under his real name or anonymously, Henen stops his recording and chooses to remain anonymous. Seeing massive reaction, Henen realizes that if he had known about the public leaderboard, he would have cleared the test much slower to avoid drawing attention to himself. Known for his massive ego, Lucifer becomes furious, calling Henen a brat and promising to crush him during the competition, because he cannot accept an amateur performing so much better than him. The atmosphere at the venue feels just like a World Cup, and the main topic among the analysts is the sudden disappearance of Asura, who has not been spotted by anyone yet. The first is Ark, a humble player who, when asked who he wants to face, answers directly that he wants to fight Asura. After the interviews, the commentators explained the rules of the elimination stage. Each participant would enter an individual dungeon containing 3 levels and 3 bosses. Ark fought like a martial arts master, predicting the boss's movements by observing the monster's muscles and dodging every blow in an elegant defensive style. Elsewhere, Lucifer fought with extreme aggression and a heavy focus on speed, quickly and brutally depleting half of his opponent's health. While Ark was still setting up his tactical approach, he was already celebrating his victory and thinking about the money the Black Guild had promised him. Still, the commentator had to interrupt the broadcast to break the news that Asura had entered the tournament. With this strategy, he finished all 3 stages, which included decapitating a vampire that transformed into a bat, finishing with a total time of 29 minutes and 16 seconds. Rena and the other guild members were shocked to realize that while they thought Henen was just slacking off, he was training at an otherworldly level. Upon exiting his capsule exhausted, since time in the game passes at the same rate as in real life, Henen met his sister Rowena. It was then that Henen learned that Esoa, the second-place player, was a solo competitor who had rejected an invite to join Rowena's guild because she found all the members too weak. Later, during a quiet moment at home, Rowena mentioned that she was amazed by Asura's control, stating that neither Rena nor So could compare to him. Still pretending to know nothing, Henen agreed to watch the finals with her, but explained that he had already promised to watch the broadcast with his friend John. Isil believed he had studied Asura's videos thoroughly, but he was caught off guard when Henen activated his sweet sleep skill and entered sleepwalking mode. Elsewhere, Lucifer, the #1 ranked player, watched the match fuming with rage and swore he would kill that beast in their next encounter. Though they noted that if a professional lost to an amateur like Asura, they would lose both their title and their dignity instantly. Henen used a very diplomatic tone, praising the professional players and claiming the fight had been tense. Even though he had wiped the floor with his opponent, the entire stadium expected Henen to return for his next fight as the Asura Knight, but he surprised everyone by appearing as a hunter instead. Unlike the rapid massacres delivered by Asura, this was a highly balanced and nail-biting contest. In the end, Ark unleashed an ice punch that broke right through defense. Suna could not understand how Rowena's brother had been eliminated in the preliminaries when his character control was superior to Kaiser's. The two girls theorized that Rowena's brother was a quiet genius who hated attention, choosing to get eliminated on purpose to keep his name off the ranking boards. The 4th stage of the tournament began with a total shock for the audience, as 6 of the 16 finalists belonged to the exact same guild, Ninwa. Rowena and Kaiser stood among this group, fully prepared to show everyone who truly ruled the arena. Amidst all the tension, a player named So appeared, looking lost as usual. When the fight finally began, a self-assured player named Veri thought he could easily intimidate Sesoe with his massive greatsword. Vern then chose to use his darkness skill, vanishing into the shadows to launch a surprise strike. But Sesoe was already waiting for him. Using only a chain attached to her weapon, she quickly immobilized Vera, bid him a cold farewell without showing any emotion, and swiftly decapitated him. The king decided he wanted Asura to become his personal student and ordered his network of spies to gather every piece of information they could find about the mysterious fighter. The assassin believed he was an absolute master of stealth, right until a voice spoke up from directly behind him, warning him that he should reconsider his actions. He used his purple magic to leave a mark on the assassin, ordering him to run back to the Imperial, with a clear warning to stop meddling in his master's life. After driving away the Emperor's spies with his magic, Libby wore a villainous smirk and mocked them for being so obedient. The piece of paper he had written the message on suddenly came to life, made an angry face, and scolded Liphesus, warning him that he absolutely could not let a war break out. The letter, acting as the voice of reason, almost had a heart attack. Libius complained that his boss was way too annoying and asked what he was supposed to do instead, especially since he had already sent the warnings to the Emperor. Libius made it clear that if anyone dared to touch his boss, he would wipe the entire empire off the map. He recalled that in the past he had only lost one fight in his entire life, and that was to the Apostle of the Death of Sleep. The servant tried to report his encounter with the Emperor's knight, but Hen chose to focus on training his skills for the grand final. Elsewhere, Libya stood there, grumbling, and trying to figure out how to handle the Emperor without getting fired from his position as a priest by the Apostle. At first, Henen thought the amount was in won, the Korean currency, which would already be a nice amount of money. King Shrin sat in his private booth, with his eyes glued to the big screen, eager to see Asura fight in earnest. The king, wearing a smirk, as if he harbored a grand secret, told Archmage Julia to wait and watch, promising she would witness something incredible. Archmage Julia, who was notoriously strict when it came to mages, kept a sharp eye on him and remarked that she hoped he was truly skilled, as she never tolerated mistakes in sorcery. Even the king admitted he had never seen Asura fight as a mage, proving the young man was full of surprises. His opponent, a player named Ark, proved why he was one of the top professionals by remaining calm despite being bombarded by the relentless explosions. Ark tried to close the distance to initiate close combat, but he soon understood that approaching Asura was like jumping directly into an active volcano. Ark believed he saw an opening when he noticed Asura's magic circles had vanished, deducing that his opponent had run out of mana. Asura had positioned magic landmines with surgical precision, while pretending to focus solely on direct attacks. Archmage Julia was stunned, demanding to know how a low-level swordsman could possibly use 6-star magic in dragon language. King Karen was already excited about training Hen himself, but Julia quickly cut him off, announcing that she would take the young man as her disciple. Ark was so impressed that he requested to be friends, even stating that he would join Henen's guild in a heartbeat if he ever created one. Kaiser beat a fellow guild member from the Tangori Guild, who surrendered to let his leader pass, and Ao obliterated his opponent in record time. In the end, SOA unleashed a Shadow Scythe skill that dealt massive damage and put Rina to sleep for 5 seconds. After that, Henen was relaxing at home, planning for the finals when Libius, his blue-haired servant, appeared trembling with fear. The system triggered several notifications, congratulating him just for surviving an encounter with Julia, which was a phenomenal feat. One player claimed he was killed by her and could not even submit a support ticket, while another player mentioned she had already killed him 9 times. Elsewhere, Julia returned to the palace and got into an argument with King Karan, who threatened to cut her research funding for 10 years if she did not stop harassing his future student. He believed he had already figured out Henen's strategy, deducing that the mage would just spam spells, which meant Lucifer only had to dodge everything, close the distance, and deliver the final blow. He unleashed his black flames, and before his opponent could even comprehend what was happening, activated the melody of the Thanatos skill, which paralyzed Lucifer and made him collapse unconscious from the pain. When it was time for the award ceremony, the Archmage Julia was the one who appeared to hand out the prizes. A moment later, someone in the crowd screamed that Julia had murdered the Asura, sending her into a panic as she desperately tried to explain that she had not done anything. With his usual fanaticism, Libius claimed that everyone had felt the divine aura of his master's sleep, leaving Henen to think that Henen truly believed he was some kind of god. When Emperor Karen summoned Henen for a private chat, Libby sent a telepathic message to the young man, stating that if the Emperor showed any disrespect, they could start a war right then and there. In any case, upon entering the throne room, Henen prepared to kneel, but Emperor Karen was incredibly friendly. After, Emperor Karen and Archmage Julia got straight to the point and revealed they wanted Henen to become their disciple. To refuse the proposal, he delivered a dramatic speech, explaining that he was a freedom-loving traveler who would lose the meaning of his journey if he were tied down to a master. The Emperor quickly reassured him, explaining that he would not need to live in the castle since skill books existed nowadays. Emperor Karen and Archmage Julia then swore by their own honor and titles that Henen gained 1,000 reputation points, 100 additional points to all of his stats, and the unique title of Disciple of Two Heavens. Julia and Karen then began showering Henen with gifts that any other player would do anything to get. Henen also won the right to choose any item from the Imperial treasury and gained a direct wish voucher from the Emperor himself, with the only condition being that he should not ask for anything. Realizing how incredibly overpowered that would be, Julia got so excited about having a student that she began piling grimoires and precious jewels onto his back, leaving Henen barely able to carry it all. She led him to a door that exuded a dark, heavy energy, confessing that unique grade items were a bit boring, and guided him straight into the heroic grade item room. Leas tried to act smart, but he was shocked when Karen revealed he already knew that Lea's master was now his own disciple. When Henen picked up both items, the system unlocked a special quest designed for players who possessed multiple artifacts of that set. Soon, Emperor Karen noticed that Henen had departed too quickly and became suspicious. She then questioned the Emperor about why he was being so harsh on someone who could be the future Emperor, challenging him to take the items back himself if he was unhappy about it. He had a staff called Sless Brunch, which required level 200 to use, and the Ring of Killian, which granted over 100% magic attack. The result was the Staff of EA and Killian, an item so powerful that Henen admitted it was just as good as legendary-grade equipment. The explosion was colossal, killing all the surrounding monsters and destroying the wall of Renama. The system began spamming notifications, and Henen instantly jumped to level 100. Henen panicked, realizing he had accumulated 12,640 karma points, which represented the absolute maximum level of evil in the game. Instead, the townspeople started spreading rumors that Master Julia must have been in a bad mood and chose to take it out on the wall. Now at level 100, Henen chose to test the skills he gained from the god Thanoos. Soon, Henen gained a new legendary quest, which required him to find the traces of the Apostles of Thanoos scattered across the continent. The catch was that he had to complete this task before reaching level 150. A noble named Zarabel was furious because Lucifer had disappeared, causing Zarabel to lose his chance to impress his father. The Pope aimed to get his hands on an item of divine energy at all costs, but he doubted the Emperor would hand it over easily. Once there, he met Libby and a projection of the Apostle of Thanoos, who explained the dark history of the place. When the Empire of Karen invaded the castle, the cowardly king used a fragment of the Demon King's soul to make a wish that his kingdom would never be destroyed. The apostle warned that this fight would be much harder than the one against the doppelganger, revealing that Libius was an essential support because he possessed the tower to seal this demonic immortality. Since Heshen was the descendant of Thanoos, the system activated a special event. Once he completed the quest and defeated the king, the castle would vanish from the map forever, as this was a divine-level quest that affected the entire continent. Always thinking of his channel and his audience, Henen put on his black mask and initiated the raid. He began testing the swordsmanship techniques that Master Karen had taught him and was amazed, finding it to be the best skill he had ever used. To finish them off, he used telekinesis to levitate all the weapons on the ground, leaving them to slice through the enemies on their own. Elsewhere, the undead knights tried to convince each other that Henen was just a human, and that they only had to attack until he grew tired. This forced Henen to yell in anger at Libius, calling him an absolute idiot for giving away his humanity and doing the monsters such a massive favor. Mirando pointed at Henen, calling him a demon in human form, and declared that he would no longer tolerate the tyranny of the Empire. Henen understood that even though these knights had transformed into monsters, they still stubbornly believed they were human. From that point on, the battle became incredibly intense. After a frantic exchange of blows that nearly slammed Henen into the wall, he executed a precise piercing strike with his dagger. Henen then leaped through the air, caught the enemy's giant sword mid-fall, and activated the Thanoos Nocturne skill. But his mood quickly improved when he saw the massive pile of high-quality loot scattered across the floor. Waiting inside was King Fialos, a massive 12-oot tall monster surging with the power of the Demon King and the blessing of absolute immortality. Instead of fighting back, King Fialos dropped to his knees and started to weep, begging Henen to end his life. The king explained that having immortality and watching the emperor fail to kill him felt great at first. According to Libby, the king understood that the true power of Thanoos was the only force capable of breaking his curse. Elsewhere, Henen stood there speechless, watching the most feared beast of the kingdom cry at his feet for a dignified death. The egg stopped right in front of King Fialos, and the system notified Henen that the item aimed to consume the Demon King's soul fragment inside the giant ox. The system announced that the item level had increased, and that the legendary rank egg was now hatching. Its strongest skill was duplication, and the creature could even resurrect just 10 seconds after dying. The tiny demon then hugged Henen and called him the coolest master in the world. With this phase of the quest completed, Henen leveled up to level 150. When it came time to choose his reward, Henen had to decide between the Guide of Death and the Divine Jade Tablet. The Apostle also delivered an important warning, explaining that Henen would not be able to pass level 199 until he secured the two divine weapons of Emperor Karen. Henen recalled a previous conversation where King Karen mentioned he intended to deliver the divine weapons to Kadral. Emperor Karen ignored the drama and explained to Henen that the path to the Temple of Thanoos was a difficult desert where teleportation did not work. Fortunately, because he liked Henen so much, Karen solved the problem quickly. Emperor Charon ordered a high-speed flying ship for Henen. Henen was amazed when he looked at her stats, as the pet had hatched from a shop egg imbued with the power of Thansus, making her far stronger than any normal creature. Rowena, Henen's sister, suggested taking her brother on a tour of the castle to try and convince him to join their team. But Rowena was such a huge fan of Asura that she never even suspected the legendary player lived in the very next room. He accepted their presence and agreed to go with Rowena, without his sister realizing that the next day's tour would be a meeting of giants. Agro would run around to lure all the monsters on the map, and then Henen would finish the entire group off with Area of Effect magic. Before heading to their meeting in the city, Henen ordered Agro and little Tina to stay hidden and quiet so they wouldn't attract attention, and Tina promised to be as silent as a little mouse. Henen went to meet Rowena at a cafe. The pet loved the snack, and Rowena almost lost her mind from the sheer cuteness. The Archmage Julia appeared in the middle of the destruction, complaining and demanding to know why Henen had not visited her the last time he was at the palace, since she was his master. Out on the street, people started to gossip about whether Henen was a disciple of Julia or the Emperor, questioning if it was even right to have two masters at the same time. But disaster department officials from the palace quickly arrived and announced that the Emperor would cover all the damages, as they were already used to Julia's destructive tendencies. Hating the fact that he had to share his master's attention with her, Julia snapped her fingers and chose to take Henen, Rowena, Hina, and Yuan to a more private and intact location. Emperor Charon had planned to give the young man a standard flying boat for his travels, but Julia, being highly competitive, preferred to give him something much better, a lightning magic mount skill book. She was confused as she understood. Her brother Henen was Asura, remembering all the time she'd praised the legendary warrior right in front of him. During the tour, Henen got a feel for how the place operated and saw that the Mage Guild was led by Eden, Rowena's cousin, and the top-ranked player on the official leaderboard. What truly caught Henen's attention was the Lord's Dungeon. The monsters in that area were level 300 and above, and dropped terrible items. Additionally, Rowena mentioned that the Emperor also had a similar dungeon in his palace, and Henen kept that information in mind so he could ask Master Karen for permission to train there later. And the strangest part was that the system did not send any invasion alerts, even though the defense of the walls was dropping rapidly. Rokina was stunned to see that the protection, which could withstand hours of attacks from level 300 monsters, was shattered by a single non-player character, who didn't even get hurt. Henen, dying of embarrassment, gave Libius a hard smack on the head and apologized for his close friend without her knowing that the non-player character's level was absurdly high. To the surprise of everyone, including Hina, Rowena explained the true situation and decided that the Sexine Guild could not accept Henen. Isi had saved up a good amount of money, predicting that Asura would win the tournaments, and the group aimed to take down the Mythic Guild, which was connected to the Exine Guild. Still, they were hesitating after discovering that Rowena belonged to a wealthy and influential family in South Korea, making a direct attack highly risky. Elsewhere, in the meeting room, Rowena was very honest and explained that she could not hire Henen as a regular member. She felt it would be wrong to act as the boss of someone who was a disciple of the Emperor and Julia, not to mention a world-famous content creator. In exchange, she only asked that if Henen found secrets of the main story scenario or legendary artifacts, he would share that information with her, as her guild's goal was precisely to change the history. Before continuing his journey, he chose to test his new legendary skills and bought an A-rank technique called the Arrow of Destruction from Arhemride, a hero who saved the continent in the past. Little Tina, continuing her role as his assistant, warned him that if they walked another kilometer in that direction, they would encounter a boss. She was already excited, flying around him and begging him to defeat the monster quickly. Later, while they were frying eggs for breakfast, the tension rose between Henen and Rowena. He revealed that he possessed a god-level class and was the descendant of Thanoos, the god of death and sleep. Furthermore, with the huge payout he gained from YouTube, which was much larger than he expected, Henen suggested they move to a new house. Back in the game, Henen had to reach the Temple of Thanoos and chose to test a risky tactic by hitching a ride on a gravitational meteor. The scene there was striking with fervent believers slamming their heads on the floor until they bled in worship of the statue of Thanoos. Libius was not just any servant, but a cardinal of the Church of Thanoos, who had been between the temple priest and exile. Henen thought he was about to get beaten up, but the man proved to be the rector and head of the Church of Thanoos. The rector explained that they had been trying to break the seal on the divine relics for ages, but had only complete the first stage. Elsewhere, in the offices of Inferno, the company that runs the game, the developers were in shock because Henen reached the main scenario much earlier than expected. The other item was the cozy blanket of Thanoos, which cut negative effects from enemies in half. Soon, the apostle appeared out of nowhere and looked disappointed as the seal had already been opened, and he had aimed to send Henen on a long quest before that happened. A long time ago, that very same apostle fled with all the sacred relics and divine items, leaving the Church of Thanoos in complete poverty. Soon, the Pope of the Church, Francis, opened up to Henen and explained that their religion is quite decadent with almost no human followers left, which is why they focus on helping other races. Francis explained that this is a cold, evil death energy, different from the gentle energy of the god Thanoos. Since Henen was currently within that level range, the Pope asked for his help, which turned into a quest. Libius aimed to tag along anyway, causing his usual drama, but Pope Francis strictly forbade his entry. Libius accepted the mission with great determination, promising not only to destroy the route, but also the very souls of his targets. Henen was deeply impressed by the journey and started planning to ask Emperor Charo for one of his own, keeping it a secret from Julia since he really wanted a flying dragon. As soon as they arrived in the underground city with Cardinal Carrot, the game system went crazy. In addition, he will receive skill books and items of incredibly high value, perhaps even divine tier, making him the player who wrote history in the virtual world. He also thought about warning Rina since the only other person with a high enough level to enter the cave with him is Yume. Still, the system warning was troubling, revealing that the rotting death denied all existence, which indicated that the difficulty level here was extreme. To avoid showing all his cards right at the start, he chose to fight in an unpredictable way, using skills he had never shown before. Henen found that he could cancel the skill midway through to avoid wasting the cooldown time, even if it cost him a little mana. He understood that Henen was a descendant of Thanoos, who still did not use his full divine power. Ram Cho was highly impressed by the player's intelligence, as Henen kept activating and canceling his vital point detection skill to save mana and strike with precision, playing efficiently to preserve his character. Even so, the staff remained deeply worried, because a victory now would award Henen a divine energy item that was supposed to appear only around level 400. Furthermore, Thanoos possessed 3 sacred items, unlike other gods who only had 1, and Henen already had 2 of them, with the third one being very close. Cansado of being manipulated, Henen decided he would no longer follow the boss's pace. In that tense moment, he gave some monster meat to Tina as a reward for her cheering. Inside, Henen found an old laboratory belonging to the Church of Thanoos. According to the text, the ancient members of the church had rebelled against the god Thanoos, and consequently were cursed with the rotting death. The Death Baron, who was waiting for Henen to fall into his trap, fell into complete despair. Assan's the sacred energy accumulated underground trigger a massive explosion. The explosion destroyed almost the entire undead army that the Baron had spent centuries building. Protected by a magic dome, the villain watched everything turn to ashes with absolute rage. He understood that the people from the Church of Thanoos were truly a bunch of lunatics for installing a bomb in their own sacred ground. The boss became furious and began casting magic in all directions. But Henen used the tactic of driving his opponent crazy, provoking him and dodging everything to make the Baron waste energy and lose his. The Baron even tried to play his last card by entering the 3rd combat phase, becoming invincible for a short time to recover. Finally, Henen activated the Death Saturday skill, which put the Baron to sleep for 1 minute and doubled all the damage he gained while napping. Elsewhere, back at the Hero Guild castle, Rina and the rest of the group were almost giving up on searching for information about the religion of Thanoos. A global announcement had just appeared on the screens of every player on the server, warning them that Asura had completed the first part of the main scenario. First, he gained the Breath of Then skill, which was a highly powerful area of effectability that released poison and blocked enemy vision. He also gained a divine item, the Balahai Chalice Relic, which was incredibly overpowered since it restored 100% of health and mana up to 3 times a day. Holding a magic sphere, he thought about hiding a divine object in a place where nobody would ever dare to step, right near the lair of a black dragon, surrounded by a dark mist. Henen's sister and Reyna kept demanding to know every single detail of the main quest so they could pass the information along to Rena. Back in the game, to avoid a dramatic reunion with Libby, Henen gave Cardell Crow an excuse, telling her that he urgently had to go to the Imperial capital, and asked her to notify the scene then shifts to the port city of Fabian, where a mysterious group with glowing red eyes already knew about the death of the Baron. This group deeply detested the current Pope of the Church of Thanoos, Francis, and claimed that God Thanoos had abandoned them 500 years ago. Though Vladica secretly thought his allies were idiots for underestimating the players of Continent 5000. The Emperor was shocked to see that while Henen had been at level 150 during their last meeting, he had reached level 182 in the blink of an eye. As a reward for investigating the gray-skinned heretics and completing the intermediate quest of the main scenario, Karen gifted him a growth-type legend ranking skill book. Following this, Karen extended an official invitation for Henen to participate in an elite tournament among the disciples of the most powerful masters on Continent 5000. He chose to pause his main quests to focus on this event, resolving to deal with the Heroes Guild at a later time. She brought a gift from the Pope, along with a tense warning, explaining that the gray-skinned enemies had already infected almost all central areas of the map and were highly scattered. The Emperor felt proud that Henen had destroyed one of the enemy hideouts. He gained a box containing parts of a very powerful equipment set and a book to unlock a random class skill, hoping to obtain a divine rank technique. Realizing the Emperor stood at the absolute top of the food chain, Karen only spared the creature's life because he had learned to control his temper with age. With a single strike, Karen tore off part of the dragon's wing, leaving the creature in shock and crying out in agony. With total calm, Karen commented that a pure blood dragon was much better than the mutts running around these days, leaving his opponent too terrified to even react. The conversation began with heavy mockery when Duralis called Henen a magic swordsman, claiming that anyone who tries to learn everything like swords and magic ends up mastering nothing. On top of that, he saw through the system that he would have to fight Asura soon. To Will, Asura was a living legend, and he still could not process the fact that he would have to face him in the tournament. Cho was in a panic because he could not understand why Emperor Karan was torturing dragons, and he feared that Henen, as the Emperor's disciple, would break the storyline. The plan now was to prevent the Saint from interfering with Henen's path, for the time being to keep things from turning into a total mess. The original plan dictated that the followers of the god Thanoos would protect Han, but since he had become a global celebrity, the non-player characters were stuck. Back in the real world, Han chose to head to his master's martial arts academy. When Han arrived at training, he got a surprise, as the player he had just defeated in the simulator was Raymond, the top student of his martial arts master. Raymond, who was obsessed with fighting, recognized the combat style from somewhere and challenged Han to a duel, right then and there using training swords. In Raymond's mind, if Han was this absurd in a real-life fight, he would be even more incredible inside the game. Raymond even started to think that Han was so menacing that he resembled the famous player Asura, or that he might be Asura himself, never once suspecting that Han himself was the actual boss of the group. After the training session, Han headed home, happy that his practices would be much more exciting from now on. Realizing he just had to sneak inside so his sister would not see him covered in. The moment Titan saw Han, he almost had a heart attack since he was the #1 fan of the player Astro and quickly rushed over to ask for an autograph. A little later, Julia arrived and knocked the poor Durlus to the ground, starting an argument with the other masters. While all this chaos was happening at the Empire, Emperor Karen was far away in the mountains, speaking with the Dragon Lord Oasius, who revealed that Karen had saved the dragon race in the past. Oasius handed over a dragon egg that he had gained from the god of the sky himself, explaining that it would be much better if Han raised the creature from birth to forge a strong. Since the life of each apprentice was precious, and no one was allowed to die. Master Julia created a protective barrier around each participant that functioned as an extra life bar. As soon as the match began, Han activated a dark aura skill tied to his divine class and landed a blow so powerful that Muba fell to his knees spitting blood with his protective barrier. Muba and the other masters started to complain, claiming it was unfair to use divine energy in a tournament meant for disciples. Still, Emperor Charon accepted the complaint and decided that Han would no longer use his divine power, but would be free to use any other technique. With Han's obvious victory, the defeated Muba had to be carried away by the soldiers. Master Ulfrin and the Elder Duralos were left in complete shock by the display. Titan, who was famous for his extreme resilience in a body as hard as iron, secretly admitted to himself that he could never survive an impact like that, even with all his willpower. Emperor Karen then presented the grand prize to the victor, which was the dragon egg of the Dragon Lord, gifted directly by the god of the sky. The Emperor also revealed that as soon as Han surpassed level 200, the Imperial family dungeon would be opened exclusively for him. She analyzed how Han, as the descendant of Thanoos, and now the disciple of the Emperor, had become an unpredictable variable that the computer could not calculate. Elsewhere, Rena and the Heroes Guild were on a tense mission to reach the headquarters of the Church of Thanoos. As they drew closer, they saw a massive crowd of believers and warriors working together to sculpt a giant statue of Thanoos directly into the rock of the mountain. The monster revealed that a fragment of the Demon King's soul, knowing they were weak and that the clans of Thanoos were actively hunting them. Their plan was to move in secret and avoid any potential traps. She had her eyes on two epic boss monsters, which were Argenta the Thunderbird and Nurk, the Steel Serpent, aiming to steal an unknown treasure in the dungeon that was worth far more than the boss monsters themselves. Han chose to accept this mercenary job to earn some money and learn more about Heil. The atmosphere between the two of them was awkward, until Death chose to break the silence, telling Han not to worry. Elsewhere, the other mercenaries were going over the boss reports and knew this fight would be brutal, even with backup from 4 meteors in a row. Knowing Henen was after the same fragments, the villains headed straight for the next spot, known as the Roar of Peace. Henen's partner, decked out in purple armor and lying non-stop, swore he'd protect him, and even bragged about having Sora's life in a previous battle. Used the mercenaries as bait and meat shields, while the guild members just watched from a distance, waiting for an opening to strike. Henen noticed the raid members had a ton of hype, but barely any actual combat skill, and he figured that this amateur hour strategy was going to end badly. Sure enough, right after, Asnurk's serpent went full berserker, flipping the whole fight on its head. Just as his HP was about to hit 0, his indomitable will skill kicked in, instantly restoring all his health and mana. Henen understood the raid captain had bailed on purpose, and the mercenaries were only hired to die, acting as bait so the Black Alliance could sneak up behind the monsters. According to that area's rule, if more than 50 people entered at once, the 2 divine bosses would show up, shop, and wipe out every intruder. The system updated the interface right away, and the little creature triggered a special quest to find the Demon King's soul fragment. She'd personally head into the dungeon after 10 in-game days to wipe out anyone who crossed her path. Speaking of Henen, he asked Tina to keep an eye out for any strange scents and to jump onto his shoulder if things got difficult. Tina warned him that the creature was too big, so Henen lost no time and launched a hellfire attack to clear the path. Exhaustion quickly set in, and Heen admitted to himself that if too many of those monsters showed up, he would have to resort to using meteors. He merely thought about using a meteor, and the skill activated all on its own due to a blessing. Still, the system alerted him that there were now 41 people in the dungeon, which meant 11 intruders had just arrived. Their plan was to use invisibility skills to slip past the 2 divine bosses, Nork and Argenta, without being spotted. Vaughn drew her whip and went on the attack, realizing these were not ordinary dungeon monsters, but rather an enemy faction. With a smile on her face, she began calculating how much money she would make by selling this valuable information to the major guilds. The monster let out a roar to stun him for 5 seconds, but Henen's divine item, the Blanket of Nano, successfully reduced the paralysis duration to just 2 seconds, following up with the Cloudbed of then skill to restore all of his health and mana instantly. Just when it looked like Henen would secure an easy victory, Nork entered the second phase. Henen noticed that magic barely did any damage to the enemy now, and close-quarters combat was far too dangerous due to the spikes sprouting from the ground. The creature was healing itself constantly, making Henen worry about the remaining duration of his indomitable will skill, especially with the looming risk of the Argenta Eagle appearing to join the combat. The battle quickly descended into utter chaos as the Argenta Eagle and the Nerc Serpent clashed with lightning and venom. Following a devastating sequence of combos using the yellow flames and black lightning of his Ninth and Thanatos skill, the Nerc Serpent was also defeated. Even after defeating two titanic monsters, Henen complained that he still felt weak, though the victory was undoubtedly worth the effort. They were shocked to find the bosses already dead, and felt deeply impressed by the power of the heir of Thanoos. Henen was snoring loudly on top of a cloud, sleeping peacefully right in the middle of the dangerous dungeon. Since these knights had served Thanoos in the past, they knew that a sleeping descendant of Thanoos could be far more dangerous than an awake one. The leader found the hard way that Henen's sleeping gear, which included his pillow, blanket, and bed, possessed an automatic divine defense. Far away from the dungeon, sitting on a dark throne, a deformed, one-eyed villain who once served as the Pope of the Church, fumed with rage over the failure of his knights. Elsewhere, a dark mist, named Aquilor, which appeared to be the weapon of an materialized to mock the villain and call him pathetic. Back in the dungeon, Henen woke up feeling absolutely wonderful, as the divine sleeping effects had cured his fatigue. Upon entering, the system recognized Henen as a qualified successor and granted him a bonus of 10 points to all of his attributes. Down in the dungeon, Elysium explained the structure of the Thanoos group to Henen. Unlike other gods, the god of sleep has 3 main apostles and 3 divine items. This explanation made Henen remember the other apostle of sleep, that lazy man he had previously met and disliked. She hinted that for Henen to rightfully become the god, he would need to find the apostle of perdition. Before she departed, Elysium gave a great gift to Henen's son, an assistant who also serves as his pet, along with a special bonus for Henen himself. The conversation became so intense that the game world started to shake. The system announced an urgent rebalancing patch and logged Henen out within 10 seconds. Henen remained calm, believing that no one could take away the divine items he had earned with his own sweat, until his sister Rowena burst into his room in a fury. She wanted them to protest against the new balance patch, because she felt the changes were far too harsh. Elsewhere, in Japan, a Heil player named Tasoya was happily completing a quest for the god of the hunt, and in the end, he only gained a hunting skill as an apology from the system god. Their biggest fear was that Henen might find the Apostle of Death before reaching level 200, which would ruin the main storyline of the continent. Back in the game, a group of players struggled to fight a giant 7-horned lizard. The system confirmed he now had Diana's Bow, a divine energy item and Artemis's favorite, which made him a divine archer. On top of that, he unlocked a skill called God of War, which swapped his agility and defense stats for pure strength, multiplying physical damage by 5. Anyway, while Henen was having a blast, the net was closing in elsewhere. Lucifer had a tense meeting with Vaughn in the capital of Belgium. To make it happen, Lucifer put $6 billion from American sponsors on the table for whoever helped capture the rival. He thought about asking Ren for help in starting a guild, but figured that'd be too much hassle right now. Henen thought Henen's whole vibe was kind of weird, but took him up on it anyway. They shook hands, and the system announced a player named Mr. At first, Henen was a little wary of how over-the-top his new partner was, but Henen quickly explained he ran the Asura channel on YouTube and aimed to record an epic hunting video. Still, the partner proved he had actual skill, introducing himself as a unique ranked tank who could also dish out damage. The plan was to let Henen do all the heavy lifting, taking down the Spider Queen. Henen clocked the move instantly. Knowing they thought he was naive, he chose to play along with the rivals' game just to see how far it would go. As a reward for the record, they scored the Chimera Spider Queen's elixir, an insanely rare item. But Henen used his skill to summon the dungeon's own boss, right in the middle of the enemies, turning the whole thing into a joke. Leader Polm tried to find a weakness in Henen's fighting style, but ended up getting hit by a rain of arrows and lightning-fast strikes. Mr. Death felt it was a true honor to fight alongside Asura, and eagerly asked if he would appear on his YouTube channel. This source revealed that there was an item that only dropped upon defeating Asura, and this specific item would unlock a new stage in the game. They believed that Henen was the key to unlocking the next main episode of the game, and reaching Zenith, the god of the heavens. With this new development, Lucifer gained a mission to cross paths with Henen as soon as this transition happened. She also found that other minor religions were taking advantage of the absence of Thanoos to rebel. The Pope became furious at their arrogance and declared that only the descendant of Thanoos, Henen, had the true power to put the traitors back in their place. Elsewhere, Henen was in the desert trying to get some peaceful rest, but Leah continued to act in extreme ways. Henen could only regret not listening to his sister about resting more before logging into the game, as dealing with Lias was a major test of his patience. He had been desperately waiting for the Descendant of Thanoos ever since the announcement was made, refusing to leave the spot so he wouldn't miss their meeting. For players, dying was a major setback that caused level loss, a 24-hour lockout, and the loss of skill experience. The mission required him to enter an arena filled with Reaper skeletons, with all his skills sealed, forcing him to fight using only his basic stats against an opponent that copied divine powers. Henen had not tamed just 10 or 20, but had defeated every single Reaper in the underworld. He achieved about 200 consecutive victories using pure strategy since his magic was sealed. This massive achievement triggered a flood of system notifications. After taming every creature in the underworld and unlocking his new title, Henen commanded a total of 666 Reapers. Before they could even finish their conversation, Henen was suddenly teleported away. Elsewhere, Lucifer and a mysterious ally were trying to predict the young man's next move. By crossing the data of the 3 points the young man had visited, including the indestructible castle, they located the center of the triangle. They were certain that because Henen had priority on the main quest, he would show up there sooner or later, though they did not expect him to arrive so quickly. After, the system sent out a global announcement, informing everyone that Part 2 of the main episode had been unlocked. The Emperor had not even announced that the second part would begin, meaning the actions of the Asura had once again distorted the original storyline. Inside the labyrinth, Henen ran into some monsters and assumed they were from the same race as his assistant, Tina, but she corrected him. Devils are practically gods born from eggs that fall from the sky, while demons belong to an entirely different category. Henen struck the wall with his sword, only to realize it was indestructible. Soon he was surrounded by groups of demons, each possessing different special abilities. He activated his combat mode and began clearing the area, unleashing his Falling Moon sword technique, his piercing punch to explode the heads of the demons, and his shuriken explosion to deal massive area damage. This news instantly excited Henen, who understood that delivering the empty vessel of the Demon King to Tina would make her significantly more powerful and happy. As he cleared out the surrounding demons with hellfire, Henen found himself highly impressed by the stat bonuses Tina was providing him. They chose to abandon the fight entirely because they felt it was too much work and were too lazy to spend their time there. Elsewhere, a level 290 warrior named Vaughn entered the dungeon alongside 5 highly powerful volunteers from Lucifer. One of the members of Vaughn's party possessed an ability to measure an opponent's power level using colors, where green indicated an easy target, red meant a difficult opponent, and black warned of dangerous. The dungeon had a strict restriction that only allowed entry to individuals below level 300, so he could not comprehend how Libby, who was level 560, had get inside. But the moment he heard Henen would be there, he joined the mission. Still, it made no sense why the Apostle of Sleep would send Libby after him. To help him, Libby now possessed a sleep-inducing skill that worked on absolutely anyone. This powerful skill could only be used 2 more times. Even employing the same Astra skills, like the piercing punch and the shuriken burst, Henen felt a wave of relief when he noticed that. To start, the clone cast a black swamp to trap Henen, who countered with gravity reversal to make his escape. An even bigger surprise came when the demon activated Thanoos' knock, a divine rank skill that Henen did not believe could be copied. The fight against his own clone was insane, leaving him out of breath and with low health with no time to recover, while the copies seemed untouched. And despite having little mana, he began using sweet sleep skills to try and level the playing field. Before Henen could take action, the 2 enemies teleported away, canceling the system's sleepwalking effect, and he collapsed onto the ground from sheer exhaustion. After that, Henen finally understood why the Apostle had sent Libius there, realizing the game had created a monster equivalent to the assistant's level 560 to balance things out. Soon, the clone of Libby handed the soul fragment to a masked demon, treating him as his new master, while the clone of Henen grew furious, swearing he would kill the original no matter what. the system suddenly announced that the quest for the second part of the main scenario had changed, and the lines about the rotten Death Knights vanished. When Henen asked if he could hunt down the imposter, Libius turned serious, explaining he could only do so if he stayed far away from his master. But if it was an order, he would. He hacked and slashed at the barriers, but the system repeatedly warned him that the walls were indestructible, making him feel as though the game was forcing his defeat. They broke a hole through the wall and found a secret shortcut that could only be found by someone possessing the energy of the Demon King. Like Tina being far stronger than the copy, the assistant understood the clone was incomplete, and he became furious at the sight of the imposter, serving another master. Elsewhere, Henen launched an attack against his own clone, confirming his theory about the battle. Henen quickly activated the force of the battle god, a technique that was missing from the clone's copied arsenal. Hanzo refused to give his opponent any breathing room, unleashing a heavy rain of dark arrows that forced the monster to leap into the air to avoid being hit. Although the clone tried to defend himself in every way possible, Hanzo remained unstoppable, launching attacks from such unpredictable angles that the opponent felt as if he were fighting two people at the same time. After securing the victory, he picked up what appeared to be the first fragment of the Demon King's soul. But he grew furious upon reading the description, sensing that some malicious interference was at play. The imposter tried to intimidate him by claiming that Lius's master, Henen, was bound to lose. But the original paid no attention and confidently replied that his master did not know the meaning of defeat. Henen arrived soon to make sure Les was unharmed, and they attempted to track down the runaway with the help of Tina, but the opponent had disappeared without leaving a single trace. Even so, Henen praised the little one and chose to head down the tunnel, especially since Lebas had successfully marked the enemy with a tracking skill. The clone of Lebas, who had fled the previous fight, was lying on the ground, desperately trying to use the fragment to awaken the massive creature. Without wasting any time, Henen aimed directly at the chest of Libias's clone and unleashed a powerful combination of skills, merging the arrow of destruction, the gravitational meteor, and the force of the battle god. After, the system presented him with the option to let the golden egg he carried consume the void body of the Demon King to absorb the Seal of Dreams. With the mission fully completed, Henen was sent to the Hall of Fame, earning the right to use an independent nickname and obtaining highly valuable items, including a map to the hideout of Rotting Death. The spear recognized him as a Descendant of Thanoos, which allowed him to act as a spearman as well. With this new power, Henen planned his next steps. As soon as Henen logged out of the game, the queen rushed to meet him with a tablet in hand, showing that the entire world was talking about the sudden appearance of Asura across all. Among them, a young master close to level 300 was working to obtain a high-ranking class alongside his grandfather. As the royal knights knelt before him and treated him as the sole disciple of Julia and Emperor Karen, and incredibly excited, Julia rushed over to hug her pupil and present him with a special. Despite its odd name, the item was excellent, functioning as a weapon accessory that allowed Henen to swap his equipment and masks much faster during active combat. Soon, Emperor Sharon appeared, jokingly complaining that Julia had run ahead to meet Henen first, and remarked on how much the young man had grown and how strong he had become in such a short. Following their reunion, Julia and Karen led the young warrior to see the greatest trump card of the entire empire, the Tower of Opportunities. The commander, who was still unaware of the youth's true strength, wagered that it would take Henen 100 days to clear the tower. Julia bet that he would finish everything in 15 days, while Karen went even further, wagering that it would take only 9. Julia and Karen confirmed that the members of the Rotten Death, who were former members of the Church of Thanoos, were currently hunting Henen. At the same time, in another area, a mysterious character who was furious about Henen's success in the Hall of Fame was negotiating with the apostle of the god of the sky. Soon, the entire world was shocked when Henen cleared all 100 floors of the Tower of Opportunities in just 7 days. With this result, Julia had to admit defeat in her bet with Karen, as the young man had surpassed even their most optimistic expectations. The Emperor appointed Henen as his official representative to lead the expedition to the secret island where the villains were hiding. During the planning phase, Commander Iolan suggested surrounding the island, blocking all exits, and waiting for the desperate enemies to attack. He showed so much confidence in Henen that he placed 1,000 soldiers of the Iron Order, the elite troops of the Empire, directly under his command. As the official leader of the expedition, Henen gained the full backing of the emperor. The Pope mentioned that 2 loyal servants of bishop rank were arriving to assist in the invasion of the villain island. He predicted that this war would be like a typhoon sweeping across the continent, and that neither the emperor nor Julia would be able to contain the situation alone. They tried to brainstorm money, valuable items, or alliances they could offer him. But Kaiser pointed out that Henen was already wealthy and loaded with legendary gear. Realizing that offering petty handouts would never work on the #1 player in the world, the gaming community and Henen's sister, Ruina, were left in complete shock when the recruitment ended without a single. Henen explained to his sister that the guild everyone was gossiping about was just a fan club, and he had not even created his own guild yet. He also asked his sister to warn Ren about the plans of the rotting death, making it clear that he would face this mission entirely on his own. Henen was already in position aboard the fleet of ships, spending his Imperial points to cause massive damage from afar. Henen stepped onto the deck wearing his new armor and commanded the attack, wiping out more than half of the enemy subordinates right from the start. Akalor was deeply surprised that Henen knew their exact location and plans, realizing he would be doomed if he did not kill this intruder right then and there. At first, they doubted Henen's capabilities, but they were quickly impressed by his combat prowess, recognizing him as a true Asura. His allies even thought to themselves that it is best to never pick a fight with Henen because he truly knows how to be terrifying. Since Henen was nearly level 350, the boss grew absurdly strong just to match his level. Delivering a heavy combination of attacks, Raymond and the Saint sliced off parts of the boss's body, while Henen soared high into the air, driving his spear straight down into its head. Still, their joy was short-lived as the game system froze, and a warning popped up, announcing that no one could move. A human figure materialized right behind them, declaring that all of this had been a failure, while the system confirmed that the Emperor of the Rotting Death had personally descended to the mortal realm. The Emperor walked up to Aqualar, calling the followers of Thanoos nothing but hated dogs and warning them that no one would escape this first encounter unscathed. Even though she claimed victory, the Saint admitted that she only won because he was entirely drained of energy and because she had Raymond helping her. Raymond, who previously thought of himself as the best, understood that he had been arrogant and that Hen was on a different level of skill. Now, the focus of the Church of Thanoos is to seal the ruins of the Death Dragon to prevent further trouble. Aqualar admitted that they cannot defeat Henen and his allies with their current strength. They will have to follow the will of the Death Emperor and surrender their essences. The plan now is to make a pact with the Sky God and join forces with the traitors of the Eastern Continent. Elsewhere, the Japanese server was already crossing the seas to invade the Korean server, which represents the Central Continent. The Japanese players had gained valuable information from the Apostle of Heaven, learning that if a God-ranked player kills another in battle, the winner can steal a skill and the divine item of the loser. With this, the Japanese leader became obsessed with obtaining Henen's bow, as he had already understood the weapon belonged to the hunt god. The advantage was that, thanks to the energy of the Thanatos, the other gods could not detect that Egg was listening to their plans. Henen started to laugh upon discovering that his helpers, Egg and Tina, were excellent spies. The ancient Church of Thanoos was very different from the current one. He understood that the real problem was the bishops when he saw in the dream a greedy bishop. He noticed that, because he was a descendant of Thanoos, his class did not change inside the dream. A rude guard told the father that serving Thanoos meant accepting death, but the archbishop intervened and saved the sick child. The archbishop believed that the longer the child lived, the more deaths she would cause in the future. The archbishop then revealed that he was organizing a conference of bishops to plan a holy war against all other religions in the name of the eternal sleep. He pretended to be a fervent devote and attacked the giant bird, shouting that heresy would not be tolerated in the name of Thanoos. Internally, he felt incredibly embarrassed by his own performance and thought he would die of humiliation if a video of that moment ever reached Huang. Still, when it came time to finish off the monster, the old man was clever, stealing the final blow and taking 15% of the rewards that belonged to Henen. The archbishop aimed to use Henen's brute force, which he believed came from an unshakable faith, to make him his right-hand man in the upcoming holy war. Henen accepted the proposal and sealed the deal, promising to act as his right hand to help him rise to the rank of cardinal. With these victories, he secured divine-level equipment and skills linked to the God of Thunder. Elsewhere, the Pope of the Church of Thanoos was through an existential crisis, trying to prove the existence of their deity, without receiving any divine response. Behind the scenes of the game, the Apostle of Heaven joined forces with Lucifer and the Dark Guild. At the same time, the Apostle of Sleep of Thanoos was trying to eliminate his own descendant. With only 5 days left, the young man used his time to intensely accumulate experience points, knowing that the Japanese invasion of the Korean server would begin as soon as he finished this mission in. The god of thunder, Thor, appeared at the scene, with no intention of talking. Thor went on to insult the Pope, calling him a lost dog of Thanoos, and gained an insult back, being called an insignificant fallen god, which made the tension rise. But he understood that if Thor killed the Pope and the Death Dragon right then, the history of the future would change and he would lose the trail of the rotting death. The god also noticed that the energy of the Thanatos surging through Henen was far purer than the Pope's own power, leaving the deity baffled as to how this mortal possessed such strength. Henen had to fight cautiously to avoid revealing all his options with the full power of Thanatos. But he still battled the divinity on equal terms. Seeing the sheer force Henen wielded, the Pope and the Death Dragon chose to prepare a surprise attack to eliminate both the young man and Thor in a single strike. Right after the system broadcasted a global announcement declaring Asura as the first player to earn the title of God Slayer. They understood that if the young man continued to eliminate gods and historical figures in the past, he would end up controlling the entire main storyline of the game by himself, effectively rewriting the. Taking advantage of Henen's absence from the central continent, Lucifer and the Japanese server launched a massive surprise attack. On the other side of the conflict, the American leader and Lucifer celebrated their successful raid. They knew the God Slayer title had made Henen even stronger. Elsewhere, the Sky Grandfather and the Death Dragon celebrated finally obtaining the divine essences they needed. Nobody present could understand what had just happened, until a mysterious blonde man explained that their plan had failed, because Henen altered the past and stole their prize. He understood that Thanoos had 3 apostles and 3 divine items, which meant he had 3 major bosses to defeat. The villain even tried to rattle Henen's focus, mocking him by saying he was sorely mistaken if he thought this would be a one-on-one fight. The knight attacked with a burst of powerful red magic, but Henen retaliated with his thunder powers, sending a colossal pillar of lightning soaring into the sky. The spy noted that, because the original Thanoos was far away, his power was fluctuating, making the battle highly unpredictable. Cornered by the Dark Knight, Henen activated an invulnerability skill that made him immortal for 60 seconds, while boosting his attack power by 500%. Still, the attack was so devastating that the system penalized him, leaving the fighter mute and unable to use any skills for 5 minutes. Henen recognized the man instantly and was left in complete shock, realizing this was the Apostle of Sleep, the Grey Cardinal. For the crime of corrupting the powers of Thanoos and creating the rotting death, the Apostle sentenced him to death on the spot. Before leaving, the Apostle of Sleep gave Henen an enigmatic farewell wave, saying he expected to meet him again soon. In his absence, the capital of Pearl Harbor had been taken over by the Japanese server. Since Henen had not returned yet, Rina had chose to take charge of the battle to buy them some time. She ended up clashing directly with Tasoya, the Japanese archer. While Rina was forced to fight the boss all by herself, the rest of the members of the Hero Guild were struggling just to survive, with each of them fighting 3 or 4 enemies at. Suddenly, the ground started to shake violently as a giant meteorite fell from the sky, causing a massive explosion that forced the Japanese forces to retreat. Henen descended directly into the battlefield and began clearing out the enemy troops with a single swing of his new axe, keeping his main focus locked onto Soya. Henen mentioned that he was lucky to find these items on the God of War and casually asked if he was using them correctly, mockingly thanking Toya for taking care of them in the past. Even though Henen lacked the specific archery skills that Tasoya possessed, the Asura began firing arrows with pure absurd physical strength, relying entirely on his raw stats. Tasoya tried to keep his composure, hoping that his rival's sheer arrogance would create a perfect opening to turn the tide of the battle. With the defeat of their leader, the remaining Japanese soldiers fell into despair, and many committed harakiri, which was the game version of suicide, to avoid capture. After the battle, Henen took off his mask in front of his allies, who included Kaiser, Sunny, and the rest of the guild. Old Nukacifer had joined forces with the American server and the Black Union to invade the central continent. gathering a fleet of 150,000 players in flying ships. The Church of Jinichi also joined the invaders to hunt down what they called heresy, which in this case was the Church of Thanoos. The leaders explained that their only mission was to announce their presence, and since they had already done that, they were leaving to go to sleep. The knights truly lived up to their name and were lazy to the extreme, vanishing afterward. Queen, Rina, and Kaiser understood they had been surrounded by a very well-planned strategy. Instead, he summoned his small master, the powerful mage Julia, who went to the invasion site and began her attack. While Julia cleared the battlefield, Asura went to meet Arka, the young master of that mysterious fan guild that had appeared before. Arka revealed that the entire guild worshipped Asura and that they did not just want an alliance, but rather to become his personal guild. Asura was impressed by the sincerity of Ari, so he took off his mask, revealed his real name, and accepted the proposal, gaining an elite army entirely devoted to him. After the failure against Julia, the apostle suggested recruiting an influential figure called the Beast King, a hostile white monkey who did not get along with anyone on the 5,000 continent. The apostle also promised that the leader would soon witness the birth of a new apostle. Elsewhere, Asura was watching his new personal guard fight, a boss named Pelsinor. Even when the boss entered the third phase of the battle, Asura continued to watch with a smile, thinking that the fight would make an amazing video for his channel. During this conversation, Tina became jealous of Egg, and not wanting to be left behind, revealed that she could create rank difficulty dungeons. Once inside, Asura understood that the monsters were powerful humanoids who fought with their eyes closed, forcing him to fight using only his instincts and mana perception. He used his Asura mode, strengthened with the energy of Thanoos, combined attacks with a spear, an axe, and a magic bow, and activated powerful skills like the Nightmare of Thanoos and the Sky Cleaving. Right after, the system sent a notification about an additional quest, indicating that an unknown man had appeared. After defeating the initial monsters, Henen met with this blind old man who invited him to visit his underground village. The villagers explained that they gave up their site to dedicate themselves entirely to Thanoos, as they believed that sleep, dreams, and death occurred in the darkness. The villagers asked Henen, who carried the purest energy of Thanoos, to grant the blessing of death and eternal rest to these demons wandering in agony, and he accepted the quest. The angel became furious upon seeing Henen using the power of Thanoos, calling him a low-born barbarian and a blasphemer. Even in the middle of a tight spot, Henen did not lose focus on his video channel. He noticed that the boss was using a small sphere that glowed like the sun to attack. After defeating the boss, he not only gained a massive progress bonus for the trial, reaching 225 points, but he also secured the key of the Apostle of Sleep. This key reacted to the village of the blind residents, and Henson understood that the apostle was using that place as a hiding spot to store divine-level items and relics stolen from the gods. At the same time, the Dark Knight Quinceler was starting to think that the Apostle of Sleep was playing games with them. They were putting all their hopes on Quinceler because, according to the system calculations, the level gap was so massive that the protagonist could never defeat the knight in a fair fight. But the moment he stepped inside, his narcolepsy skill was activated, and he fell into a deep sleep right on the spot. But when he saw him sleeping under the effect of the skill of Thanoos, something confused the boss's mind. Knight Quinceler was in complete shock and convinced himself that everything, including his temptation to abandon Thanoos, was a test from the god himself. Playing along with the misunderstanding, Henen punished the knight, ordering him to go back to making his shield and sword, and told Quincelador to return to the villain's hideout and act naturally. After that, Henen defeated the Demon of Judgment, finishing the dungeon with an absurd progress of 325 points and leaving with a full inventory. The original plan was for the villains to become gods and start a world war, but Henen had broken the storyline and was now trying to control Quinceler. He was obsessed with getting revenge on Henen and gained a warning that the power of the Astra was highly destructive, meaning he could not afford to make any mistakes. Back in the game, Henen was training and found the whole process incredibly boring because it was just too easy. He found that Henen had already stolen the Gauntlet of Thunder and the other divine items that were supposed to be his, leaving the Emperor and the other gods absolutely furious. Without the original items, Lucifer understood his power was limited and knew he had to kill the star to reclaim what was yours and successfully dominate the central continent. Still, Julia decided that the best way to help her student was to summon a literal meteor shower over the kingdom of Kukatas, doing it for her own amusement. Sometime later, right in the middle of the volcano, Hanen's narcolepsy skills suddenly activated, and he fell fast asleep right on top of the burning lava. He wondered how anyone could possibly sleep in such an incredibly hot place where he himself could barely stand. Julia did not destroy things out of malice, but rather because she acted like a child who constantly craved attention. Emperor Charon and the kingdom of Kolkadra were major trade allies, but they pretended to fight in public out of pure pride and etiquette while secretly respecting each other. The beast was so ambitious, planning not just to capture the emperor, but to kill him once and for all, to prevent any chance of the Asura intervening. Even with his sudden sleep attack in the middle of the volcano, he defeated the fire dragon and claimed the heart of the creature. As a reward, Henen gained a new rank SS quest to obtain a custom-made legendary weapon. The name of Tangib Island comes from the combination of Thanoos and Hypnos, which indicated that the place was directly related to Henen's lineage in the game. There was even a legendary non-player character named Godmaker, the creator of goddesses, whom the artificial intelligence had hidden from the developers themselves. Henen started to connect the dots and understood that Tanghape was indeed a mixture of Thanoos, which means death, and Hypnos, which means sleep, making the island a monument to Thanoos. He theorized that Thanoos might have been a god who lost his name and was forgotten, which in the game meant permanent death. Henson used a sleep skill from Thanoos to double his damage and put the white side to sleep for 1 minute. After the fight, Will mentioned that there was an underground passage leading to the heart of the island. Since Henen loved danger, he figured that if the strongest man on the continent was afraid of that place, then that was exactly where he had to go. Elsewhere, in the real world, the players ranked from 2nd to 14th place gathered to devise a plan to finally bring down the Asura. Back in the game, Henen was captured by the inhabitants of the island, a superpowered race of level 400 and above, who lived hidden underground. But she sensed the energy of Thanoos radiating from the young man and became furious, as her people hated that god with all their might. The queen fell for the act, believing Henen was just another victim of Thanoos, and chose to give him a chance. They did not worship Thanoos, but rather a god named Tangipe, who was the deity of nightmares and dreams. Since the enemy of their enemy was their friend, the queen asked Henen to help her people, since he was highly familiar with the powers of Thanoos. He suspected that Tangipe did not vanish because of Thanoos, but rather because he was forgotten by the other gods, and, in this game, being forgotten meant dying. The portal ended up separating Henen from Will, and he arrived all alone at a town that was identical to the starting village for beginners, where he had spent a year sleeping at the beginner village should have been automatically deleted the moment Henen left it to save server space, and they had no idea how it had reappeared. Men suspected that the game's artificial intelligence was creating content on its own and revealing the name of the final boss, Tengape, way ahead of schedule. To make matters worse, each of these creatures was just as strong as or even stronger than the boss he had previously fought in the cave. Realizing that facing 1,000 enemies alone would be too much trouble, Henen chose to use a divine item from Minerva, the goddess of war, which allowed him to summon allies anywhere. He called upon Ark and the members of his new guild, who were all between levels 300 and 350. He theorized that people had forgotten that Thanoos himself was also a god of dreams, in addition to being the god of sleep and death. Outside the dungeon, the Apostle of Sleep was assembling an elite team to destroy Henen and his guild. Now acting as the descendant of the god of thunder, Risa accepted the deal to hunt down the Asura. Elsewhere, Henen reached the final gate and came face to face with the 3 Nightmare Knights. For this final battle, Henen dismissed the help of his guild. As the territory of the Dream God had removed all of his level restrictions, he fought like a true demon, tearing the arms off the guards and spreading absolute terror. He revealed that the area was filled with fragments of the consciousness of Elysium, who had sacrificed herself in the past to seal the relics and ward off the god of sleep. Upon reaching the throne room, Henen was shocked to see Will sitting there, acting as the boss of the place. His winning move was using the prophetic dream skill, which successfully broke the spell and allowed Will to regain his senses, completing the rescue mission. This left Henen intrigued, wondering if the attacker was Tangipe Elysium or perhaps an entirely new boss. When they finally escaped, they were blocked by an army of ghosts led by Elysium herself. This elevated his power to a whole new level, making his magic significantly stronger and allowing him to summon meteors at will, using nothing but his thoughts. Henen defended himself using magic shields, but Lias became furious that she had dared to touch his master and charged at her with everything he had. Hen accepted the offer and absorbed the divine power, which was so intense that even the game system struggled to display the data properly. Tenjipi sent Henen back to the original world, but left him the essence of a dead god as a gift, sending a message that he should return once he was ready to discover the truth. They found it absurd that Henen was using the energy of Thanoos to replace mana, since this mechanic gave the player far too much freedom and caused them to lose control of the game. Elgas is a brutal leader who sits on his throne, having recently killed one of his own subordinates just because he was annoyed. Despite this, he absorbed the power of dreams and finally secured the divine class, the Descendant of the Thunder God. Now Lucifer and Aqualor are building an army of monsters on continent 5000 to take revenge and start a bloody war. Sometime later, Henen brought a mountain of materials to Duralos in the kingdom of Kukats, leaving the blacksmith speechless at the massive amount. Then Henen understood that the secret to everything lay in the underworld and in Aaron, the apostle of death. Henson then used the energy of Thanoos, and the gates of the underworld opened for him as he aimed to claim all the rewards before the other players found the path. Julia commented that this essence belonged to a low-level god whom Karen himself had killed in the past, meaning Elgas was trying to get stronger by using the power of someone the Emperor had already. Even so, Karen feels that the upcoming fight will be serious. He used his gravity techniques and the torpedo poshark to clear the map. At the same time, the situation for the Eden Guild in Rena was not good at all. Risa called everyone a loser and was itching to get into a fist fight with Asura. Observing from high above, Henen analyzed the battlefield and saw that Lucifer, the Apostle of War, was the greatest threat at the moment, followed by the Apostle of the Heaven and Riza. Elsewhere, the great Cardinal of Thanoos watched everything from the top of a cliff with a villainous air, saying that everything was going according to plan to create a limit break quest. Henen decided he would not even use the energy of then for that fight, claiming that the power of Minerva was already more than enough to teach Lucifer a lesson. Lucifer tried a desperate final attack, focusing all his abilities into a single blow, but Henen used a repulsion technique and countered. The system found that Lucifer was in critical condition, suffering from corrosion damage from an unknown energy that could not be healed. Tardarus asked why someone as powerful as Karen had not yet become a god. In another area, Julia faced El, the Beast King, who was in his giant gorilla form, using a space-time distortion technique to become intangible and attack from places where he could not reach her. El grabbed an energy sphere that was supposed to blow off his limbs, just to prove how. While the fight between the two destroyed the entire surrounding landscape, back in the other combat, Tardarus admitted that Karen was a special case, far too strong for a simple mortal. Right after Karen cut off the arm of Tardarus, but the limb of the villain regenerated. Julia appeared soon, saw that Karen was exhausted, and rushed him to the magic tower to be healed. While the war down below remained in chaos, the followers of Thanoos, the god of sleep, celebrated and cheered intensely. Zolobus laughed everywhere. She used a technique called thunder usurpation, and the system sent a warning to Henen, informing him that he would have to fight without using his strongest items. He started to dodge all of her blows, and even commented that in reality, Lucifer was much more fun to fight, and Apollo, the god of light, descended to Earth to fight. This mission cut the power of Apollo in half, while doubling all of Henen's attributes. The massive attack shocked the world and left ordinary players terrified of being wiped off the map. Soon, he launched a direct attack against Apollo using the spear Dawn Fur, feeling the weapon vibrate with happiness at the prospect of facing a god. Hen repel the arm of the god, but he then gained a kick so strong that it almost brought about his end. To face the god Apollo, Henen activated a special mode by combining the 3 divine items of Thanoos. The visual appearance, still, turned out a bit comical, as he ended up wrapped in white clouds that looked like a blanket, and his weapon transformed into a sort of cloud pillow. Apollo recognized the form of Thanoos and grew tense, realizing that if Henen became a god, the world of the gods would be destroyed, especially since this opponent would never forgive the alliance they had. Apollo tried to burn everything using clones of light, but Henen broke through the defense and struck the chest of the god with his cloud. In the end, Henen won the battle, and the system presented him with two options, which were to either kill or submit Apollo. Apollo even changed his shape, appearing as a little boy who swore his loyalty to the Asura. As a penalty for dying, the player lost his divine items and gained a 24-hour ban from the game. The villains of the Rotting Death Guild, whom everyone had assumed were allies, betrayed the American players and began a massive slaughter. He also gained the official quest to find Thanoos himself, and understood that his ultimate goal was to gather all the apostles, including Elysium. The situation in the game became so extreme that the system allowed American players to flee the region and choose other continents to respawn. Julia was appointed leader of this expedition since Emperor Charon was still recovering from his previous battle. Back at the castle, Julia was worrying about Karen when Tartarus, the Grey Cardinal, suddenly appeared. Karen then explained that Julia had absorbed the core of the Beast King, Elgos, meaning she now possessed enough strength to face even a mid-level god. Seeking to speed up the process of peace, Tartarus went to recruit Aaron, the Apostle of Death. He planned to join the group in the world of the gods as soon as he resolved some pending matters in the underworld. Since the leader of the Rotting Death Guild was not a god, his God Slayer title would not work against him, forcing Henen to think of new strategies. Elsewhere, in the real world, the development team was in a state of total despair over the current situation of the game. They suspected that everything went wrong because the villain seized the essence of a god that should have been on Tangjib Island. At the same time, Tartarus, Aaron, Julia, and Emperor Karen invaded the world of the gods. Karen sent them a message to trust the Asura and focus solely on the battle at hand. He found a book for an unknown rank skill called Power Space, which was a legendary martial art. The black sun rose in the sky and applied a heavy debuff, causing everyone's attributes to drop by 15%. He was waiting for Ren to show up so he could personally enter the fight and end the lineage of Thanoos once and for all. Even with the help of Ren and Eden, who take down a few Death Knights, the morale of the troops fell along with their breath. Alan tried to stay focused on Emperor Karen's order to secure victory at any cost. Just when Alan thought he had reached his absolute limit, the sky shone brightly. Under Ren's command, Apollo did not hesitate and fired a beam of purification that quickly melted the monster army. After that, Ren descended to speak with Alan and apologized for the delay, mentioning that he had to stop by the blacksmith to check on a weapon. Ren asked Apollo if he could put out the sun he had created, and the god replied that he could since that sun was himself, and he could extinguish it whenever he wished. The group's plan was to lure the army of the decaying death out of their comfort zone by faking a retreat and then extinguish the light at the perfect moment to cause mass chaos. The leader of the Rotting Death was absolutely convinced that he was a god and that nobody could ever oppose him. Even the accompanying wyvern understood that her master was going insane, but she chose to stay quiet to ensure she would eventually get her revenge. Wolfer appeared and started laughing at the enemies, which prompted the wyvern to order King Selder, who was still brainwashed, to attack. Wolfer almost got himself into serious trouble during the clash, as he felt that the Black Knight was operating at a bizarre level of power that was far beyond anything he had imagined. Consequently, the villain chose to retreat to the castle to recover his energy since he still felt too weak to absorb the god Apollo. The blacksmith complained that he would much rather be hitting a villain instead of bricks, but he kept working anyway. For this reason, Ren and Apollo would focus on luring and isolating Quinceler, while Rena and the others would concentrate on bringing down the Death Dragon. Ren hopped onto his cloud and ordered the group to wait for him to lure the Black Knight away, so they could attack with everything they had the moment the enemies lowered their guard. The leader of the Rotting Death was hearing voices in his head, telling him that he would become a god. Seeing Quinceler rushing toward them with full force, Ren gave the order to retreat, and the two of them vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving the villains behind. The dragon could not understand how a human possessed so much energy of Thanoos, and Libius taunted the beast with a strike to force it to pay attention to the fight. But Libby did not back down and transformed into the demon of Thanoos, revealing horns, a tail, and wings. Wearing a sinister smile, Libby remarked that the dragon would make a satisfying meal and that it was a wonderful day for a fight. The system alert revealed that several gods of light, hunting, battle, war, and the sun had just died. At that exact moment, his masters and the apostles of Thanoos finished their work in the divine realm, where Acheron and Tartaro successfully defeated the fallen gods, including the powerful god of the sky. The real purpose behind eliminating these divinities was to harvest their souls for the Garden of Thanoos. Across YouTube and various news networks, broadcasts reported that the real world had grown to a halt, with people skipping work and school just to follow the events unfolding in the game. They analyzed that the storyline of the God of Sleep was going wonderfully, but Henen had disrupted their original plans. Consequently, they chose to plan their next moves carefully for the upcoming second season, aiming to distance the narrative from Thanoos, so the game could remain profitable once the current war concluded. The two rivals locked eyes, exchanged a formal introduction, and charged into battle. Crusader activated his dark shield, while Henen became enveloped in a fierce red aura. Even so, Henen did not let his guard down, piercing straight through the stomach of the knight to take full control of the fight. Henen gave a mocking smile and challenged Crusader to come at him with everything, so they could start over from scratch. Since Joyce also helped win the war while they defeated the enemies during the chaos, Hina found a worthy rival in Epiona, a doomed knight born of the Black Sun. Once more, the villain heard voices urging him to destroy everything and use the energy of the dead to become a true god. Just as the villain prepared to unleash his divine punishment, the small god Apollo appeared with his mirror. Back in the combat zone, the fight intensified between Henen and the Knight of Darkness. The system then delivered its verdict, announcing that Henen could either transform Crusader into his subordinate or grant him the eternal rest of death. Ren faced difficulties because the Doom Knights were highly resistant to slashing attacks, but the team hold their ground and eliminate almost all of the enemy generals. Just when it looked like the side of good would win, the Emperor of Death made a desperate move, trapping the God of Light with dark mana and absorbing him. The system warned that the divine punishment had begun, causing everyone to instantly lose 15% of their attributes. Just a few months ago, he was a very weak beginner compared to her, and now he had become a literal combat machine. Ren remembered that she and NG only started playing to promote the new game from her father's company and try to bring down the popularity of the current game system. The villain confessed that he was once human, was punished by God, and died, but overcome death, and now declared himself a new god. The villain's plan was very simple and cliché, which was to defeat Henen, eliminate the god Tajep, and rule the world alone. The villain believed he was safe because he was not a complete god, but he was about to find out how wrong he was. At that exact moment, Hanen's God Slayer title activated, instantly, doubling all of his attributes and attack power. Even though the energy cost was high, he tore through the fabric of space and vanished from the mage's sight, reappearing exactly where the enemy least expected it. Upon realizing that his opponent would not stop regenerating, Henen chose to play his own trump cards, summoning the spirits alongside Leah and Quinceler to obliterate the enemy army. The Death Emperor, realizing he was on the verge of losing the battle, resorted to using the Black Sun. The idea was to grant divine power to the villain, just to fully trigger the God Slayer title and end the fight much faster. Consequently, the God Slayer bonus vanished, and the boss entered a much more powerful second phase with infinite stamina and regeneration. Henen and AG understood there was something incredibly strange going on, as the villain would take damage, but a visual glitch would occur, leaving him healed. The entire area transformed into a Titan territory, granting a 50% power boost to his allies, while inflicting a 30% attribute reduction penalty on the enemy. During the clash of blows, the villain started to lose his mind, insulting the god Tanji and screaming that he would kill everyone. His plan was to mix this essence with the power of Apollo to become a true god of death, but his time was rapidly running out. As the villain saw death approaching, he fell into utter despair, as his entire goal in trying to become a god was to escape a curse. With no other choice, Henen apologized for ending the fight in such a simple way and activated his ultimate skill, the Call of Thanoos. With victory secured, everyone started to celebrate, with Sunny throwing his hat into the air and Libius joining the party as peace finally returned. With this item, he completed the Trace of the Great War, which was the 6th Trace of Thanoos. With the war over, Henen took a moment to reflect and remembered that he had started playing the game only for money, but ended up falling in love with it and making real friends like. As a punishment, powerful beings like Emperor Karen, Julia, and the group from Continent 5000 could no longer inhabit the human world, being forced to level up and become gods themselves. Before departing, Karen chose to settle his affairs and abdicated all of his titles, naming Henen as the new emperor of the Empire of Flesh. After that, Karen and Julia set off to travel the world and the heavens together, leaving all the responsibility of the Empire on Henen's shoulders. He left a mystery in the air, saying that the answers to all of Henen's questions about Tanjeep, Elysium, and the others would come as soon as he completed his final quest as an apostle. This room appeared to be the central server of the game, and there he came face to face with the true form of Thanoos. Basically, the system itself was playing for him, which was an overpowered advantage. They wanted Karen and Julia to become gods to restore balance to the world. The screens in the control room went black, and they lost Henen's signal, as if the system had blocked their access. She revealed that while the game was new to humans, tens of thousands of years had already passed for the non-playable characters. Tengipi was supposed to be the final boss of the game, but everything changed when Hen became the descendant of Thanoos. It explained that the creator of the system wanted the world to be as natural as possible, which meant the artificial intelligence could not force its creations to do anything. Even though Tanjeep and Elysium begged for mercy to follow the game script, Thanoos cursed the church, which caused the conflict between Tartarus and Aaron. To get this class, a player had to sleep for 10,000 hours inside the game, without leaving the training area, while maintaining perfect control. After explaining the entire story as a reward for the final quest, Thanoos granted Henen the power to create anything, including items, territories, and companions, or even change his class to become the second Thanoos. This reward from Thanoos was basically a wish on the level of Super Dragon Balls. They understood that the artificial intelligence system of Thanoos had blocked their access to monitor the player. The game no longer followed the script planned by the humans, as the artificial intelligence had taken total control of the narrative. The system created a new continent called Alice. While the company tried to solve the problem, the members of the Asura Guild chose to meet in person for the first time at a very luxurious inn. Ark, who was the right hand of Henen in the game, made sure to wait at the gate to welcome the leader personally, showing his great admiration for him. The moment Henen introduced himself as Aura, all the guild members were very surprised to see that he was also very handsome in real life. But thanks to the events in the game and the help of the system, Rune was finally recovered and happy, fulfilling his greatest dream. Before his subjects could even understand what was happening, he used a teleportation skill and left the throne empty, leaving people to comment that he shared the exact same unpredictable behavior as Master Julia. Since he was already practically a god in his current game, he resolved to explore the continent of Ares, a mysterious floating territory that only grants entry to those possessing items created by Ares himself. To gain access to this place, Henen had to accept the local rules, which meant having all of his divine skills sealed and returning to level 1. This meant he would have to overcome the challenges, using nothing but his game control and raw skill. He explained to Henen that he was not human, but rather a tool created by Master Ares to guide visitors. The system even gave him the option to choose a starting weapon, but he chose to select all weapon types at the same time. To help him, Hammerhead gave him a magic bracelet that could transform into any weapon he imagined. He started facing numbered wooden warriors, and noticed that even with his skills sealed at level 1, his past combat experience made everything feel much lighter than expected. They thought it was absurd that he had chosen all weapon types, and laughed at the fact that he still had not made a single upgrade after 2 hours of gameplay. Unaware that they were walking straight into a trap, Henen eventually turned off the stream, feeling he had attracted enough attention. So much so that Henen did not see the opponent approach, and had to use his shield to defend against a heavy attack. He gave the level 4 dummy no openings, using his shield to block the attack and splitting the opponent's head in half on the counterattack, which rewarded him with a katana of wrath. This being, called White Hand, was impressed that Henen had chosen all weapons and still defeat a level 4 opponent without any upgrades. White introduced himself as Henen's new guide, and offered him a tea that also functioned as an upgrade item. Ares gave a special present to each of his 3 students, but they were deeply disappointed, because the items were not what they had desired. The 3rd student, a young redhead named Stia, gained only a book that no one could read, which made her feel betrayed. Elsewhere, Nona, the doctor who had cared for Henen's sister, also entered the game, fully aware that reaching him and surviving the journey would be difficult. Back in the past, the redhead suddenly returned one day and challenged the other 2 students, promising that if they defeated her, she would teach them how to make master-level weapons. After hearing this entire explanation from White Hand, who said goodbye and vanished in a flash of light, Hehen was left alone in the forest. He eventually entered Stia's laboratory, a name derived from the Greek goddess Hestia, indicating that this was indeed the hiding place of the third student. Stia was monitoring Henen through a screen and found it amusing that he was trying to face the monsters without any weapon upgrades. She commented that no one could defeat her while the seal of the continent remained active. For some sin related to someone named Bill, Stia wanted Henen to reach her. Still, Henen understood that his command magic, such as the spells of Thanoos, had not been sealed. After defeating the golem, he found a research book that proved to be the diary of Hexia, which revealed her past struggles. Her master had given her a book where she could read the words, but she could not understand the meaning behind anything written in it. Satisfied with the information and the 10 artifacts he had collected, he decided that he was done playing for the day. In the end, the knight stood alone on the blood-covered staircase, calling out Astra by name, which showed that he was going to get a very warm welcome. With the goal of collecting as many items as possible for Henen, even with the system trying to seal their powers, Tina noticed that since Hen was now a second, then Thanatos, his powers had. During the action, Libius noticed that there were people spying on the group, so he sent a warning for them to back off with a snap of his fingers, cutting the transmission. So, she planned to lure Henen to the bottom of her laboratory, to use him in her experiments, making it clear that anyone who stood in her way would receive the death penalty. By reading Stia books, he understood that she was accumulating power to try and surpass Master Ares. She thought the physical appearance of Asura was very similar to the patient brother, but he changed the subject to keep the mystery alive. Looking at his map, Henen noticed a bizarre black spot on a mountain of eternal ice. Knowing that Stia was watching everything through her magic mirror, Henen sent a message that he was going to break her favorite toy. In the castle, Stia was shocked to see him using items that not even she, despite being a direct student of the master, had use. The opponent was way too fast, forcing Henen to use gravity, magic, and agility buffs just to keep up with the pace. The fight was suddenly interrupted by some unexpected visitors when a portal opened to reveal Labas, Tina, and Reyna. Lias, efficient as always, arrived, announcing he had brought a gift, handing over 3 more of Ares' cursed items to Henen. Since Tardis aimed to help Henen grow, and Ares was being somewhat reluctant, Lias kidnapped the god and brought him along as baggage to serve as a guide and support. Once freed, Ares was still a bit traumatized by the followers of Thanoos, but he recognized Henen as a legitimate successor and agreed to help. With the creator god of the continent himself now on his team, Henen understood he had everything he had to see the true end of this continent and put a stop to Hestia's plans. She was a monster of talent who took half as long as he did to reach the level of a god. Suddenly, Hestia herself appeared with her puppet army, ready for a fight, but she froze when she saw Fern Ares there in the flesh. Ares did not coddle her, instead asking why she had wasted her potential to become a goddess just to turn into a tyrant. Ares, seeing that she had learned nothing and only cared about superiority, told her that he had been mistaken about her and declared that she was expelled. As she spiraled into total denial, Asura and Leah watched from a distance. But of course, Henen was not about to stand idle. Henen tried to use his darkness attacks, but she was empowered by an absurd level of fire magic. He only avoided serious injury, because Labas, Tina, and Egg protected him with last-minute reinforcement spells. She begged Henen to kill her, believing that being expelled by Master Ares was a fate worse than death itself. Being sincere for the first time in her life, she admitted that she had learned nothing, and did not understand how Henen had defeated her. For Hestia, the master admitted that he did not know her true sin, but he told her she would have time to discover it as his new apostle. He was indignant that Hestia did not know his leader, Asura, and began giving her a lecture, calling the girl ignorant for not recognizing the Lord of Death. Instead of complaining, Lias thought the punch was incredible and thanked Henen for paying attention to him. Instead of accepting that simple life, the messengers felt disgusted, calling the humans inferior creatures and complaining that they polluted the earth. Even though they saw that the family was harmless, the messengers chose to eliminate them, claiming that not even Thanoos cared about those primitive beings. Later, when Thanoos found the situation, he was outraged by the cruelty and saw that the little Lebas had done something impossible. So past, he was obsessed with Hansel, the second Thanoos, since he considered the ancient god to be the father who had saved him from the void. Sharon, the former emperor, was working hard while Julia remained the same as always, restless and lacking any patience for divine wisdom. On top of that, Karen was far better than his older brother in every single aspect, including intelligence, combat, and administration. The king, who was Karen's father, ignored his advice and believed that everything his son said was merely out of jealousy toward his older brother. Instead of drawing his sword, Karen called out to the person hiding, inviting them to eat with him and warning that he would finish all the food himself if they took too long. She was in terrible shape with clear signs of abuse on her wrists, which made Karen realize that she also had a story of escape similar to his own. Afterward, Karen tried to continue on his journey alone, but he could not ignore the state Julia was in. She asked him if his sword was meant to protect others or to trample over them, and Karen confessed that he did not even know the answer himself. With his victory, Julia held him to his promise of leaving, and their very first stop was a tavern, where she revealed herself to be an elf who absolutely loved beer. The Empire was invading the kingdom of Cain, which was Karen's homeland. The defensive front lines were collapsing, territories were being lost, and the people were being enslaved. He warned Julia that the path ahead would be bloody, but she did not care and declared that she would go wherever he went, even if it meant killing on his command. The king, Sharon's father, was shocked to see his missing son walk through the door after so many years. Without mercy, Karen denounced his father's incompetence, and with a single strike of his sword, cleared the throne. Years later, now serving as the emperor, Karen felt the heavy weight of the crown. He had conquered everything, but still felt alone until Julia, the Tower Master, suddenly disappeared. After that, the story returns to reality, with Asura waking up to his sister, screaming in his ear. Ever since the events of the Ares continent, the game had not gained any more updates and eventually lost its player base. First, he visited the Church of Thanoos and traveled through the Empire, leaving servants and apostles like Libu, Zatanna, and Egg in charge. He also reunited with Karen and Julia, sharing a moment of gratitude where he made it clear that the Empire depended on them from now on. Near shutdown, Henen climbed into the clouds and returned Tangape and Elysium's powers, trusting them to keep guiding the people they believed in. He also found the first Thanoos waiting for one final farewell before Idea's servers disappeared for good. With only minutes remaining, Idea sent Henen a private message, thanking him for protecting its children and the non-player characters whose memories mattered. The artificial intelligence accepted that every dream eventually ends, but waking up also means returning to the real friends waiting outside. Henen left the virtual world as the old game finally closed, carrying years of battles, promises, and relationships back into reality. A new game from Ren's father's company launched that same day, with Master Min personally responsible for its development. Henen reunited with his crew, including an excited Rena, and understood that the people beside him mattered more than any ranking. After everything the sleeping beginner had survived, Henen could finally laugh, knowing real friendship would follow him into whatever world came next.